Hello, and we are live. Little post video wrap up here of the Great Seahawk Moment video that just launched. So if you're seeing this and just checking out the live stream, we do have a new Great Seahawk Moment video out. I did the Patriot video and got that wrapped up. So I'm going to be interested to hear some of everyone's feedback out there regarding that. I thought as well we'd do a little bit of a quick free agency post-mortem here on this live stream and dive into a little bit of just maybe what's remaining as far as dollars and trying to predict as we go ahead, because we are moving past a date here in free agency that's actually very important and is what has really become probably the second, if not maybe they like to call it the third wave, but it's actually become a very almost as important as the second wave of free agency. It's almost become as important as that. So we'll be discussing that a little bit as well. Welcome to everybody who does join in here. I'd love to hear the feedback we might have had. We had a few people in watching the Great Seahawk Moment videos, so I would love to hear what you guys thought of the video. I tried not to go super long on this one, but I do get long-winded in my approaches, as my 7-hour live streams are testament to, and I am much the same with these Great Seahawk Moment videos. I could probably make them 2 hours if I was just allowed to completely run wild. But it was a lot of fun to make this video. The Great Seahawk, this particular game, and it really showed. You saw it in the 49er game, certainly, and you saw it in the Packer game. The Niner game was a bloodbath game. It was probably a more so game that you saw the type of physicality and ruthlessness that the Legion of Boom played with. It was the thing that stood out to me as I watched this game film over and over as I was collecting the cuts, is just playing and play out. They're smacking somebody and playing with an attitude out on the football field that we don't necessarily see right now with the current Seahawk defense. The current Seahawk defense is great. The current team is great. It's not built the same way, and you're not going to put together a collection of individuals like that team was. But it does jump out to you as you're watching this type of footage and checking out. What's up, Super Dog? And that was the thing that really probably most about this game stood out to me, was just how physical and mean and nasty that defense could be. Just every single play they were looking to hit somebody. What's up, Seahawk Preseño, Eastern Washington? I am also currently in Eastern Washington. Matt Mosbar, what's up? How's it going, Matt? Go Hawks from Yakima. Right on, bro. Right on. So we've got an interesting setup here as far as where we're going to be seeing this draft going. There's no late sort of rumors out there in play. There's no, we're not hearing. There's a little bit of buzz out there about the Yannick trade potentially coming back into the fray in the last minute, that the Jaguars will look to finally trade him. It's interesting, to know today that the big news that kind of broke was that Leonard Fournette is indeed kind of on the trade market. If you hear that the Jaguars are willing to listen to offers, then that means that they are going to be taking an offer, and he's probably going to be moved. And the only reason that I bring that up is that you maybe wonder if perhaps Seattle could look to get Yannick and Fournette packaged together to maybe give the Jaguars a little bit more draft capital than we're currently offering in order to get the deal done. I don't know if that would go that way, but I would certainly be pretty open and happy with seeing that kind of conclusion to this situation. What's up from Kentucky, Chris Wiseman? Welcome to the chat. Me as well, Super Dog. I'm going to be moving soon, but I am currently residing in the Spokane area. Azos, can you make a great moments in Seahawk history? 1983 Seahawks 51-48 win over the Chiefs. Azos, that's a great suggestion, and I will. I think I've got to, in the next Great Seahawk Moment video, do another 80s video. I've only done one. I haven't done one 80s video because technically the Dave Craig Greg Seahawks Moment video I did was 1990. So I gotta widen this out and add some other moments. I've done a bunch here in 2012. We did one game in 2013. I've got a few I want to do of the modern era still, but that's a great suggestion. I've got to see if I can find the tape. The other thing is with the old games that's hard and that people have to kind of deal with if we do it, is that I have to close the sides down on the video. They're not shot in HD. So when you stretch it out, it gets really pixelated and distorted and you can't see much. So you have to really keep the frame shrunk in order to tell what's really going on the screen. But with that said, I've been thinking of doing if not that Chiefs game, I was also thinking about doing the playoff game against the Dolphins on the road, where no one thought that was the Cinderella game. Seattle won and got to within one game of the Super Bowl, I think, with only in their 5th year of their existence, which I think is an interesting story too. What's up, Jason McEward? Welcome on into the chat. It's good to have you in here too, man. Good to have you in the chat. Hello, what's up, man? Well, I wouldn't put the chances of re-signing Clowney at 0%, but I would put the chances of it continues to dwindle by the day. It just does. For instance, today you hear that the Jets are looking at making a play potentially for Logan Ryan. Why does that matter for the Clowney situation? Well, because Logan Ryan is, currently, I believe, here with the Titans. So if the Titans kind of decide that they're going to let him go or trade him out over to the Jets, that's going to free up some money for them to now reach in and hit the asking price of what Clowney's potentially wanting. As well, and this is as good a moment to bring it up as ever, is I believe April 26th is what I would call the compensatory cutoff date. And what that means is that any teams that sign free agents past that period don't have that count against their compensatory system. So teams like the Titans and other teams out there, potentially like the Jets or the Giants, who maybe don't want to pay that compensatory price, they may look at it and say, hey, if you wait past this point, we'll hit your asking price. If I was to be a gambling man in a casino and throwing dice right now, that's where I would have guessed the dice would probably land in this situation. Is that the only reason he hasn't re-signed is because teams are waiting for this April 26th period to pass. And it does look like the Titans are the likely candidate, especially if Logan Ryan gets dealt. What's up, Shaquem? Do a Cortez Cranny Great Seahawks moment. Yes, that's my next. The next type of series, Shaquem, I'm looking to create is going to be great players. Okay, like or what made them great as far as Seahawks. I'm trying to figure out the angle exactly of how I want to do this because I want it to be a little bit of a different flavor from the Great Seahawk Moment videos. But you're on the right track. The 3 guys that I'm going to do aligned out right out the gate on them would be the Largent, Walter Jones, Cortez Kennedy. So it would go in those 3 guys. I don't know if that order necessarily, but those are the 3 guys that are definitely going to be in that grouping as I can kind of figure it out. I've got a real unique idea for how I want to do this. I just need to get it kind of the right way I want to get it so it doesn't come off stupid. And Kenny Easley would definitely be on that too, Shaquem. Yeah, you're right. He'd be maybe the 4th member to add to that. So the only tough part too, I'll say with Cortez that sucks is that there were so many games, the way YouTube gets its Seahawk games, and that's the way that I usually can pick up most of the Seahawk content that I can, is you've got fans who've uploaded the games to YouTube, and so I can pull it off from there. Well, the issue is with Cortez Kennedy is he played in an era where it wasn't just that the Seahawks were bad, it was that the Seahawks weren't even on television for a lot of years there, where it was blacked out. And so there's a very small amount of footage to be able to operate off of to assemble it. I'm still going to do it, don't get me wrong, but that is the one kind of issue there with it. Jason, I could potentially do it with Joey. It's hard with Joey because in a lot of ways, he was really good for a really short amount of time. So he does fit into that, he burned bright for a short period. And we certainly got some great draft capital for trading him. I can't believe that we talked the Cowboys into giving us, I believe, the 1st round pick or 2 first-round picks that we got for him. So that was great. And he was a good player. He was very good. I don't know though on him. I still have a little bit of feeling like at times with his holdout when he left that it was he forced himself out of town a little bit to a degree at times. And that always makes it hard for me as a fan is if you're going to leave and force your way out, I've got a little bit of a distastefulness after that occurs. What's up, Emmett Brown? Welcome on into the chat. Good to see you there. We are not doing a 5 or 6 hour one today, guys. We're just going to be doing maybe a couple hours here. I've got to save my voice because we're going to do 3 straight days this week of probably 7 to 8 hours a pop each time. And I am not going to be able to speak come the end of it. I guarantee you. It'll be me in a whisper telling you about prospects. Fookie Bookie, what's on up from Charlotte? Great to have you on in the chat, man. Always good to have you in the chat. Azo's trading up for Yannick more likely than signing Clowney. You're right. Azo's is correct there. Can't argue with him in that respect. At this point, I would say, I don't say the Yannick deal is a likely one to necessarily happen, but I say that if you're going to have to pick one that is more likely to happen than the other, that is the one. Boom, shakalaka. What's up? How you doing, man? Emmett Brown says, I don't get the John Uch love. He looks like Shaquem Griffin, but with two hands. So what I think that the Seahawks could potentially like about Unch, and I was watching some of his tape recently, he's not a refined pass rusher, but I like, it's an apt comparison in what you say about him and with Griffin, in that he just finds a way to get to the quarterback. And he certainly uses a lot of that first step quickness to overwhelm guys, just get past him and get around him. And he's going to be a raw guy coming out. You also worry with him because I believe it's only really 1 year of good production there at Michigan. If he can slide a little and go past some of that second round period and get into the third round, I think that's actually pretty good with him because you are going to get a decent pass rush from him. I believe he had, if not the number one, the number two best pass win rate percentage in all of college football last year. I think it was even better than Chase Young. People will point to that. That's a very big indicative stat now for pass rushers, and it's going to drive a lot of a prospect's value. You see that with Chase Young. You'll see that with some of these other guys who might not have been picked as high, but because they get to the quarterback at such a high rate, it matters. To give you a flip side of this, a guy like LJ Collier had a pretty good pass rush win percentage rate in college, but then he went to the Senior Bowl and he had the best pass rush win rate at the Senior Bowl, 90%, far beyond everybody else. And if you don't think that performance probably drove a lot of why Seattle ended up picking him, you know, I got a bridge to sell you in the denial. A little behind on the chat here, but we will catch on up. But again, too, don't go to sleep on Shaquem Griffin. If you're really just looking for a pass rusher who wins at a 10% pass rush rate, which is very good in this league, Griffin gives you that, and this guy gives you that. And Seattle needs more of that. They've been operating with guys who probably win at about a 24 to 30% pass rush rate, if not worse. So, you know, getting into the 10% rate, we'll dive on into that a little bit later as I give you my guys. I was very negative on the last live stream, so I'm going to be a little bit more positive on this one and give you some prognostication as far as how the team could potentially be really good this next year, even if they're not able to add a super dynamic edge rusher like Yannick Ngakoue or Clowney. Who do you think we are going to get? Superdog asks, who do you think we are going to get from the draft this week? I've done this two different ways. I've actually done this two different ways for you guys, and I put some amount of work into this, so please do appreciate it. I'm going to give you guys who I think the Seahawks are going to pick. And again, I'm going to get behind on the chat. If I do, I will catch up. So put your comment in. I'll back up into you. I'm just going to go on my little tangents here at times. So here's my current Seahawk draft as I see the Seahawks picking. Now, this is not who I want to see them pick, and I'll get to my pick on that later. This is who I see the Seattle Seahawks picking. I have them trading back in the first round. I have them being right up in the high point of the second round. So they're not going to drop back far at that point, probably to the number 4, number 5 in the second round or so. They will pick up an extra early third round pick for that. Then they will go and they will draft Ezra Cleveland, left tackle. And I think that it's as much, and we'll talk about why I'm looking at these picks at the end of this a little bit, but I'm looking at them at left tackle. I think they've got to hedge against Dwayne Brown. They can't trust on the health of a guy who's going to be 35, 34, 35, 36 next year, who's had a lot of injuries throughout his career. Right now, you've got Cedric Ogbuche as your starting left tackle if this guy goes down. I don't think that they can lean on that. And this is a draft with a lot of very good left tackles in it. There's a lot of guys that you could potentially look at. This is very good value for him there in the second round. I could easily see them doing something like this. Now you've at that point signed Shell on the right side. You've got your left tackle cemented. You've re-signed Mike Iupati at left guard, along with a lot of competition in there. Jordan Simmons, Phil Haynes. So you're starting to kind of round out some of the depth. Maybe the quality is not exactly where I would like it to be at that point, but you've got to at least know that you're not going to run back into the situation of last year where you get so decimated on the offensive line, you just don't have the quality bodies to run out there. In the second round, I've got a bit of a shocker. This is going to be a bit of a shocker for you guys. I'm going with Damon Arnett out of Ohio State. And I'm doing it based upon a lot of with my talks with my buddy D-Mac and just watching his film. This guy's probably going to be a slot corner at the next level. A great 6-foot slot corner. An upper level, great 6-foot slot corner. Is late second round value appropriate for that? Yeah, probably. And when you watch his feistiness and you watch his doggedness on tape, I actually kind of liked him a little bit more than Okudah on tape as far as that goes. Okudah's a smoother athlete, more technically sound. He's just tighter. But Arnett is he's a little bit of a wild man out there. I would love to see it at the slot cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks. You would now at that point just completely revitalize your corner position. Seattle has mentioned they wanted to upgrade the cornerback position this offseason, not just the right corner position, but Schneider at the combine pointed to the whole cornerback position. And that pointed to maybe more than just one or two guys. This would have allowed you, with the trade you made for Dunbar, to combine this with Arnett to really solidify the secondary. And when you look at places out there like Pro Football Focus, they are pointing to now the secondary being the appropriate way to build your defense. It used to be inside out. They're saying you go outside in now. I don't know if I necessarily believe this approach, but this is where the analytics are going. And so I could easily see Seattle being a forerunner of these analytics, looking at that and saying, yep, we're going in this direction. We're going to build towards our secondary first, and then we'll just cobble together what we can on a defensive line. Again, not necessarily the approach I would take, but this is just me trying to do a crystal ball prediction here. In the second round, I waffled between two guys. And again, I'm getting behind on the chat, but just bear with me, guys. We'll catch back up on in here. In the other second round pick, I ran between two guys, Jalen Rieger and Hunter Bryant. This is the toughest of all the picks here in this draft. This was the hardest one for me to go back and forth on. I just could not figure it out who I wanted to go with, because I could understand each way. I ended up going with Rieger because he's going to give you at that point some what you really need at that point, which is a backup to Lockett, Metcalf. If they should go down, you need a dynamic talent on the outside in order to fill in for those guys if they should go down, just by the way you're building this offense. So I think that's more needed than a guy who is just going to be probably a little bit of an upgrade above what you have in Hollister, or even a decent upgrade over what you have in Hollister. It's just probably more vital to get one than the other. And I know that it's not going to make a lot of you happy out there to know that some of these picks are somewhat being picked for needs. But if you look at Seattle's recent drafts, if you look at how they've gone about their business, it has been towards leaning in that direction towards need. It has not been going to just pick the best guy on the board. It's picking to what you've needed. And this has gone back even to their original drafts. When they had 2 picks in the first round and one of Carroll's first drafts, and he got Okung and Earl Thomas, guess what we needed at that time? Franchise left tackle and a free safety. They will pick for need. It does happen. You hope you can mesh need with best player available. You hope it would work that way, but that is going to drive some of these picks and how I am looking at Seattle selecting them, because that's what they've done in their recent history. So now we've got 2 third-round picks. We have an early third-round pick and a late third-round pick. So with the early third-round pick, I've got Seattle going with Gallimore out of Oklahoma, pass rushing, 3 tech. He looks like to me a guy who I don't know if he's got a huge ceiling to him. I don't know if he's going to be a Geno Atkins type. He's got a bigger body than Geno Atkins. That's not a great comparison at all. But he's a guy that to me is going to be able to get you a few sacks from that position and generate some pass rush. I don't want him taking on double teams, but if I've got to look at him in the third round, early third round, I feel like I can bring him in there with Jaron Reed, and now I've got my 3 tech positions starting to really come together. The next third-round pick I got is Cam Akers. This is a guy that as all of you know, follow the streams, one of my favorite running backs in this draft. If he were to happen to fall to that late third-round pick, I think Seattle would have a really hard time, passing on him at that point. I've already talked about him a bunch here on the live stream. He was on my previous draft. I think I had him up in the 4th round. I think it'd be about the 3rd here on this one. 4th, Logan Stenberg, again, another left tackle out of Kentucky, seems to be sliding because he doesn't have as much explosive elements as people wanted when he came into the pre-draft process. But when you watch the tape, the guy can just play to me. He's not a perfect prospect. He's not a guy that I see necessarily even as a Pro Bowler. What I'm looking for in my offensive line is guys that can move guys off the ball. That's what you need at this point. It's part of we're going to run. We're going to run on anybody. We're going to run on anybody who already knows we're going to run. When you need to do that, you need to have the dogs up front to be able to push the hogs. So hopefully this would be able to help go in that direction of doing that. And now I know they've re-signed Iopati, but with Jordan Simmons, he's got the injury history. Phil Haynes is no guarantee. And even the guy, BJ Finney, I don't know that Finney would really be an upgrade at left guard. So I'm going to get to the last 2 here real quick, and you guys ask questions on them here so we can get back to the chat. The last guy I have is Laurel Mutchinson out of NC State in the 4th round, the second 4th round pick that we have. I don't know if he'll last this long. I really like this guy's tape a lot. I think he has a potential. He has a higher ceiling at 3 tech, I think, than even Gallimore. I really liked his tape a lot, probably even more so than Gallimore, but Gallimore does have the physical tools that it's hard to pass up on that in favor of that early on. Again, I'll give you another interior pass rusher at this point. I know in this, and then the 6th round, I have Bravian Roy, one tech, a guy you're going to be able to put in there who's not going to get moved off the ball, can take on double teams, isn't going to get pushed back. You start to get in the 6th round, it's all flyers at that point. So we'll get back to the chat here. Sorry, I missed out on a couple there, but that is my, I'll go later on and give you guys my preferred draft going into this year later on, what I would actually prefer them to do, but that's what I see the Seahawks potentially doing if I'm trying to act like a de facto John Schneider. All right, so we're getting back to chat. Galloway was exciting. He was exciting, and he was legit like a guy that pushed into that low 4.3 speed. I mean, he had that extra gear to go. He wasn't a real refined pass route runner. I mean, he was kind of a one-trick pony at times. But he could punt return fantastic, and deep ball. When him and Warren Moon came together, those guys were just a great fit with Warren's deep ball. I mean, it was so, but unfortunately Warren was at the end of his career at that point. Emmett Brown says, hell yeah, 4 days off till Christmas. I took Friday off. I'm taking Friday off too to have fun on my Christmas. Nice, Jason. It sounds like we all are. Ahmad, welcome on into the chat, man. Fuki Buki, 7 p.m. Thursday, 1st round. Yes, I'm going to be doing an hour. I think I'll be doing an hour startup before the live stream on Thursday. I'm going to make sure, the one thing I don't want to have is you can do 8-hour live streams per day. So I want to make sure the 8 hours gets reset into Saturday, because I don't want Saturday to get cut off by YouTube rules because I ran so long the previous day. So I have to look a little deeper into how, if it resets at like the stroke of midnight, or if they consider it a 24-hour period and how they reset it. Emmett Brown, yeah, Unch and Weaver had the highest pass rush win rates. And Emmett, I think I would relate it a little bit to like Bruce Irvin coming out. Because when Bruce Irvin came out, he was not a refined pass rusher. I would even argue at this point in time, he's not the most refined pass rusher. He still really does operate off quickness and great bend. But it's the same sort of situation. When you have those physical gifts that these guys have, and Weaver's different of Unch, but Unch being like Irvin, in that you're just physically gifted to get your first step quickness, your just ability to understand how to get around a guy trying to block you, not even a technician, just understanding how to get around a guy. He's got that. And that's where you could see him coming out the box, getting you the 6, 7, 8 sacks, the same kind of production you got out of Bruce Irvin out the box. Or at least somewhat close to there. And if you could get him in the 3rd round place, that's great value to get. If I get my 3rd rounder to come in and get me 6, 7 sacks in his first season, I'm going to feel pretty damn good about that selection. Shaquem, you're the reason I bought a Lofa Tutupu jersey. Damn, man. I appreciate that. Just a little fun fact about that, Shaquem. Lofa actually ended up liking I sent him, I hollered at him up on Twitter, and he gave me a nice like back on the tweet. So I think he has seen it as well. I can't say it for 100% certain, but I believe he has seen the video. But that's awesome. You picked a great jersey. You picked a badass jersey to rock. Internet asks, do I think we can fix our D-line? Well, I was cobbling this together as I was thinking about this, you guys and girls. And so Seattle's obviously going to the cobble approach, right? Rather than you're going to get some just top-end talent to pass rush, you're going to just cobble it together, just like a little road. And so I looked at how they could possibly cobble this thing together if this plays out potentially how it looks like it's playing out, which is absent a Clowney move, absent a unique Ngakoue move. Here's what we're probably looking at. And here's what I actually kind of came to on this was, let's say, and this is built within my draft scenario that I just played out to you guys, because within my draft scenario, you'll notice I didn't have us taking a pass rusher, which I know will probably have some of you guys turning your head sideways at me, and maybe appropriately so. But here's what I noticed with it, and that is that if you want to get up into the elite range, and I don't have the sack win percent ranges from last season for all the teams in the NFL or how they ranked. I would love to have that stat. I'm going off of sacks here because that's what I could find on the internet to try to cobble together as research for this. So it's under the assumption here that we're at like a 10% sack pass win rush percentage rate, or, somewhere in that 7 to maybe 15% when you factor in the defensive tackles. But if you look at last season, we had 29 sacks as a team. Let's look at this next year and say Rasheem Green takes a mild step forward, gets 6 sacks. Let's say you go and then sign Everson Griffin because you missed out on the Yannick Ngakoue trade and you missed out on the Clowney deal. So now you're bringing in Everson Griffin as option C. Let's say you get you 7 sacks next year. Urban, 7 sacks. Shaquem Griffin, 6 sacks. Who's that? Oh, Jaron Reed, 7 sacks. And then let's say we get out of Benson Mayowa another 7 sacks. Now, if I know this is the cobbled together approach here. Now you cobble that together, you've got about 41 sacks. Put in another about 7 to 10 coming from cornerbacks and linebackers on blitzes. And now you're up in the range of about 48 to 50 sacks. 54 sacks led the entire NFL last year. So if there is and this is my, again, last live stream, I will admit I was very negative and I still stand by my words. I'm not changed my thought process on this team and my projection for this team, but there is a way this does work. There is a way that this could come together with this. And if you're into the 48, 49, 50 sacks as a team, you are creating pressure. You are forcing the quarterback off the spot. You are rushing plays. You are going to accomplish, lessening the damage that we saw last year in all phases. I'm still a little bit leery in the way they've done this. There's not a lot of cobble it together Super Bowl approaches out there in recent years past, but it's possible. Raul, hola. Jerry, some kid just tried breaking into my car, laughed my ass off. What the hell? I've heard, I was looking for places in the Seattle area here because I'm just about to move. And the thing that's shocking to me as I'm looking at places for rent is if you look at like reviews, how many people are putting in the reviews, multiple car break-ins, people breaking into my car. It seems to be a huge issue. I don't know if you're on the west side, Jerry, but I've heard it's become a real big issue. And these are places I've been looking over on like the east side even. I'm not talking like downtown Seattle. I'm talking like even over in the, Redmond and Kirkland and Woodinville areas. Like, oh, it was a 5 or 6 year old. Well, okay, he doesn't even know what he's doing, or maybe he's being sent by his parents. Maybe he's a mole. So if he gets caught, he's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What am I doing? Matt Mosbart, if Fournette deal doesn't happen, what do you think we do at running back? I'm a big fan of Jonathan Taylor. To me, is as good a prospect as anyone in recent years. The heavy college carries is overrated. Matt Mosbart, I agree. Look at McCaffrey. McCaffrey at Stanford, which was a run-first offense and hammered the hell out of that 202-pound body. Didn't deter the Panthers from selecting him number 7 overall and hasn't deterred him from having a ton of carries every single season of his career up until this point. Is he going to be able to play 13 years in this league? Probably not. But that's not what you're needing in the running back at this point. And you can't look through anymore the lens of drafting a running back through the what are we getting in year 5 through 8 phase. That's not how it works. All you got to worry about is what you get through 1 through 4 at best case scenario, really. And I echo your sentiments, frankly. I've watched a lot of tape on Taylor. It took me a second. And then when I started to see it, I was like, oh, of course, you're right. He's a perfect fit for the Seattle Seahawks and what they want to do. Wisconsin ran that zone scheme and they ran that inside zone run. It seemed like damn near 90% of their plays. And he within that box, guard to guard, not even really having to run on the outside hardly at all, though he's got the 4.39 speed to do it. He was lightning in a bottle. I mean, absolutely dynamic. I echo all of what you've said, and then I think he's going to be a great pro at the next level. Unfortunately, he's not going to last to 27. He's not going to last to 27. And I know a lot of this is going to sadden a lot of you out there because, Matt, you're not alone. There's been a lot of people in the chat that have blown me up and said, oh, Taylor. It's not that you guys are wrong. You guys are put completely on the mark. It's just he's not going to last that long. I was trying to think. There's a guy named Matthews who was drafted by the Chargers a few years ago, and he seems a little bit like that. I think he's a better prospect than Matthews. He's a harder runner inside, but I think it's very similar as far as their sort of physical makeup, and he's even a little faster. And I think that guy went in the teens. To think that this guy's going to go into the 20s, it's not necessarily, I don't think, going to happen. I could be proven wrong on this, but I don't think it's going to happen. Brendan Eichrick, Arnett's film is good, but maturity concerns may off him off season. Brendan, you are not wrong, man. And we've got to definitely factor that into play in this process and saying, okay, Seattle got burned by Malik McDowell and burned in the character part of that big time. And they got burned by the character thing with Percy Harvin. And certainly some of the personalities and groupings of the Seahawks there in 2015, 16, 17 was getting a little bit weird as far as some of the fracturing going on within the locker room. And that's how you kind of get to that place, by bringing in guys that don't necessarily, let's say, toe the line how they would like it towed. But with that said, you need some dogs on your team. You need some rule breakers. You need, when you watch the Patriot film here that I just showed you on the Great Seahawk Moments, or you watch those teams in the past of how this is how Carroll wants to build his team. It's not just that I have a fascination with the Legion of Boom, or that I want us to recreate the Legion of Boom. It's that Pete Carroll has a way that he's going to schematically build his defense. And that's what I'm looking for him to do. So when I have a team out there that doesn't necessarily hit as much as I know he wants to hit, or is as physical as I know he wants to be as physical, or as fast as I know he wants them to be as fast, then that's when I think that they're going to have to make some concessions. And I think that he might be the guy to do that, because there's not anybody else at the slot corner in this draft who you're going to be able to upgrade. There isn't. It's the outside. There's some very good corners on the outside, but inside guys, I haven't seen it there myself. Not anybody that's going to be an upgrade over Ugo Amadi. The GOAT 209. Who do you see the Seahawks getting in the first round? The GOAT. I truly see the Seattle Seahawks trading back out of the first round. Some team is probably going to want to draft one of the remaining quarterbacks on the board, and they're going to target Seattle, knowing Seattle doesn't hold teams over a barrel to trade out of the first round. The going draft capital in the recent past is, you flip us a third, you put us back early in the second round, we can make it happen. And teams know that. There's not going to be a lot of lurching around with them on it. So I really do see you're probably going to see the top three quarterbacks go. Now, Jordan Love, that's the big question. And to me, it looks like, I want to say to me, Jordan's probably a guy that right in that spot, somebody will target to jump up and grab him, because they're going to want that fifth-year option on Love that you lose if he gets into the second round. Not to mention they're going to want to leap over the other team. They're probably going to try to jump up to grab him as well there. So we'll see where it goes with it, but that's where I do see them going. When they trade back, I have them going with Ezra Cleveland, a left tackle. I think that's the need that they have not filled this offseason. Cedric Abuje is not a guy they're looking at as the future of their left tackle position. He's the sixth tight end in the swing tackle. So they haven't addressed that. That leads me to believe and points me in an arrow direction of saying left tackle is going to be what they select with the first pick, probably. Brendan says, is it a good idea to have two really young guys in one position like nickel, i.e. Arnett and Amadi, or is it better to have a vet and a young guy? So Brendan, the one thing to remember with Amadi is he can play safety as well. He played some safety in college. He's a guy that, if you look at his combine stats, go back and look at the combine stats between Quandre Diggs and Ugo Amadi. Very similar players. Very similar players. Do I want him starting out at safety for a full 16-game season? No, probably not. But does he have some ability in a pinch to go play some safety? And could he be better than guys like Delano Hill and Tedrick Thompson who've gotten snaps on this team recently? Yeah, maybe. As well, yeah, I think you're going to need to have two nickel cornerbacks because guys get injured. I believe our nickel corner this year at one point or another, even playing the limited snaps that they played, was beat up. I'm speaking out of turn because I'm not certain on that fact, but Fuki Buki, I think we really need to draft a pass rusher, but we could get more value early out of the OL or even wide out. Yeah, Fuki, I went back and forth with whether or not Seattle was going to draft a defense with drafting a pass rusher in this draft. And it could happen, and it very likely probably will happen. I couldn't end up settling on a guy in their draft that I had for my draft with Seattle and who I'd like to see them pick. I have them taking a pass rusher. So that's the difference, I think, is just but I think that they can't turn away from the offensive line talent in this draft. When I look at this draft and really you stand back from it in totality, this isn't the greatest draft in the world. This is kind of like an average draft, really. It's an average draft with some sparks of life to it. Great tackles, great receivers, but it doesn't have upper level pass rushers. It has pretty good pass rushers. It doesn't have upper level 3 techs. It's got pretty good 3 techs, with some holes to their games. So the value really is in the offensive line in this draft. Receiver, you're really, that's where the talent is, unfortunately. And there is kind of a drop off. I thought it was the mid-fifth round before, but as I watch these prospects more and more, the talent drop off is really going to come late in the fourth round. It's nice Seattle has 2 late fourth round picks because that is where it goes from that. There's some upside to them to it's a wing and a prayer. Thoughts on this trading Lockett noise? In return, second, third, fifth, or second, fourth, fifth in return. I don't think Seattle would trade Lockett. I think he's a fixture here. He works perfectly with Russell Wilson. I can't even think that has any possibility of happening. That's somebody who's blowing smoke. He doesn't cost a lot of money. They signed him to a deal a couple of years ago, so his cap hit is not huge. In fact, if you really needed to at this point, you could sign him to an extension to create some cap space if they wanted to, because he's kind of outside of that. He's not outside the bonus completely, but he's right on the edge of being outside of where the bonus money is still hitting your cap, at which point you can restructure. So no, I don't see him going. No worries, Ahmad. I try to do a bunch of these streams as I can now. So if you do happen to miss me on one, you can come back and catch me on another. I'm always around. What's up, Tobias Larson? Welcome on in, man. Welcome as always. Internet. You think Marshawn comes back? Only if we get decimated at the running back position. They're going to bring another running back in. Well, there's 2 ways it could potentially happen, I guess. If they do make a trade of Rashad Penny, but I don't think that they're going to try to shoot for that and aim to bring him back. I think that it's if you have injuries or problems, then they would bring him back. And he's probably got a bat phone into his home that's got a direct line to Seattle's headquarters there. And I'm sure if something goes down that they would call upon him, and that's not a bad thing to have in our back pocket at this point, but probably not likely. The GOAT asked, do you see Javon Kinlaw falling to us at 27? I'm sorry, the GOAT. I don't see him falling out at the top 10, and I don't see him falling definitely out of the top 15. You've got your 3 techniques in this draft that are the upper level guys, and it might be him, and then you got all the rest of these guys through the next layer. And it's not that he's necessarily amazing. He's really good. He stands out apart from everybody else, but it does speak to some of the weakness to me of the 3 tech in this draft. I watched the Gallimore tape, the Matabuki tape. You can go down the line on these guys, and there's some good, but you're not seeing difference makers at the next level necessarily. You're seeing some guys who can give you some juice, some pop, some Quentin Jefferson types, let's say. But not necessarily dynamic guys that are really going to be able to push the pocket a lot and give you a lot of dynamic pass rush. But Kinlaw has that potential in him. He's got a monster frame. He moves quick. Not a refined pass rusher, but his quickness and power is so good, it just doesn't matter. And I think he's going to get on the next level. He'll be a force at the next level right out of the gate. Maybe not a Pro Bowler, but at least, a guy that's going to generate pressures. He's going to, shoot the gap on the running plays and take out some running plays just right off the ball snaps because of his first step quickness as well. But if he falls, Seattle would be all over him. Tobias Larson, the O-line is ranked shit the last 5 years, and it really can't get any worse. Why are we not starting our young players like Haynes and Jones? See if we've got a blue chip player. The line can't get worse. Well, it comes back to Tobias, to answer your question. It comes back to schematically how Carroll, and I know I harp on this, guys, and it probably frustrates you guys at times, but I don't build this team. Pete Carroll builds this team. Pete Carroll designs this team. Pete Carroll is the one who sticks to what he is and who he is. And so when you talk about Haynes and Jones, they're very good prospects, but they're prospects whose benefit, what they do well right now is pass protect. What they probably don't do as well is run block. And so when you want to be a team that wants to run the ball, when you want to be a team that wants to run the ball on anybody, wants to just take your will and enforce it on everybody, you've got to have the talent. Or if not the talent, let's say you don't have the talent, then you got to have the road graders. That's how you arrive at Mike Iupati as your starting left guard. Because whereas Iupati had a pretty good year last year, he still really did struggle in pass protection. And he's not going to get better in that respect, but he is a road grader. He's always had that throughout his career. And Carroll is always going to favor that. Michelle Blunt says, how do you feel about Grant Delpit in the first round? I would love it, Michelle. it would be nice because I think it would also precede you at that point, probably moving on from Bradley McDougald, who I like Bradley McDougald a lot. I don't hate him. But that's an upgrade at the safety position. It just is at that point. Again, how does it work in there with Marquise Blair then and all that? How does that all shake out? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where they go with that tact of things. But if he falls to us at 27 and he's sitting there, hard to see him falling that, but he could. Like, let's say free safeties are a devalued position in the NFL. They're a position that doesn't get paid. They're a position that doesn't tend to be drafted in the top 20. So, and he's a guy that a lot of people want to they're really killing him for his tackling. So, maybe he does fall there, but I like him a lot. He's what the modern NFL free safety's got to be like Earl Thomas, right? Rangy, sideline to sideline. You can put him in single high looks and he's going to cover the red line end to end. That's what you need. It's a matter of a guy that's got to put up with these guys that got 2, 4, 3 guys on the outside, each who could challenge him on either of his shoulders deep. And he's got to cover both either way. Well, what do you need then? A rangy guy with the speed to do that. Delpit showed on tape he's got that ability to do that. A very key part of LSU's success. So bringing that to this defense, knowing what that did when you had that with Earl Thomas, even seeing with what Quandre Diggs did with that, when you saw the difference between Tedrick Thompson going to Quandre Diggs and Diggs taking away those deep routes once he arrived, you see the impact of how that affects the whole rest of the defense. And the whole rest of the defense starts to operate better and come together and gel, it seems like, when that deep ball and that deep thing is taken away. So I like Delpit a lot. And I am a little behind here, man. Sorry. I am so sorry, you guys. I didn't even realize. I get to talking and I get behind on this stuff, or I miss questions, and it's just like I didn't even notice. Okay. Boom Shakalaka. I think I would trade almost anything for Jamal Adams. Him and Diggs would dominate. Well, so Boom Shakalaka, you joined the chorus of my brother. My brother loves Jamal Adams. It's his favorite safety in the league. Shout out, Rob. I know you're listening. And he really likes him, but here's always my counter with Jamal Adams. Safeties are very similar to every other player out there on defense in that there's scheme fits and then there's not scheme fits. To me, Jamal Adams is really a 3-4 safety, a guy that I want up near the line of scrimmage who's a threat to blitz, because the biggest part of his game is potentially really his ability to blitz and how dynamic a pass rusher he is. Seattle doesn't really blitz their safeties very often. I think I could count on my hand the number of times I saw Earl Thomas blitz. So you're going to bring a guy, you're going to give up a lot of capital, you're going to have to pay the guy, and then you're maybe not going to utilize the guy in the best potential way within the structure of your defense. It's not to say he's not a great player, fantastic player, and maybe he could fit here. Maybe they could assemble him in. But like Michelle just brought up a second ago, I'm more for the rangy free safety, and I've already got a box killer in Blair. I've got already those things there. I don't know what Adams is going to do within that, unless we're going to go to a 3-4. Fiji Mark, I'm going to rewatch a bunch of tape on Michael Pittman this week. In fact, it's pretty much after this live stream. Part of why I'm not going to do a super long one tonight is because I'm going to go right to the tape after this live stream and spend the whole rest of the week diving into any of the players that I haven't been able to kind of cover on the front end of things. I've watched some of his tape, and look, he's got great hands. He's very good at acrobatically catching the ball and manipulating his ball in flight, which is going to fit really well with a guy like Russell Wilson and those trust throws. He just doesn't move as dynamically as I would like him to move. I know he's a little bit bigger of a receiver, and that affects things to a degree. But he just doesn't have some of that wiggle to his game that I think I would like to kind of see for a receiver as far as running routes go and gaining separation. I will go back and watch it though, because I know that there's a lot of people that are really, really high on the guy, and I'm kind of missing the boat on this one, I think, a little bit. So that leads me to believe I need to watch a little more of his film and try to start maybe wrapping my head around him a little bit more. And that's why I had them taking Jalen Reagor, for instance. Let's say if you have Jalen Reagor and Pittman on the board, Reagor shows explosion in his game film. And that's what Seattle's tended to favor at the wide receiver in the position in the past. 6-foot guys who run 4.4, who can jump 120 on the broad jump. That's what they want to favor as far as the metrics go. So I kind of lean towards that. But I will watch. We'll get back to Fiji by draft day. I'm going to have I'll have a much more fleshed out Michael Pittman profile for you. But I'm still not on board the Pittman train quite yet. Internet, just move to Wenatchee, bro. It's safe and cheap. I may be at this point, man. I don't know. I'm trying to figure my move situation out right now as we speak. I got no idea. Honestly, more I think of it, the Jaguars unique Fournette. Ooh, can't pronounce anything now. Fournette trade would be a BCS. I'm not good with the deals. What's BCS, Fuki? I would love it if they did that trade. You're looking at probably at that point, you're giving up the first, you're dropping back to the second. So all of the first terms of the trade we heard on the unique Ngakoue trade that first came out would still be in play. You pick up their second, you give up their first. They also get your back end second round pick that you got from the Chiefs, leaving you with 2 second round picks. Okay. Now, if we trade for Fournette, we throw in potentially at that point a third round pick. Keep your 2 second round picks and then still have 2 fourth round picks. I would think that the value would be somewhere in that neighborhood. Internet. Do we drop CJ? Remind me who you mean by CJ. Oh, the kitty's outside on the deck hunting birds right now. So she spends her days out on my deck, cackling at the birds, trying to draw them in so that she can pounce on them and then bring them inside and show me. Do you think we'll take a flyer on a nickel cornerback or a corner in general in the later rounds? So Juno White, I actually did a mock draft here of what I think the Seahawks will do as opposed to what I'd like them to do. And welcome to the chat, Juno. I actually see them in the second round going for Damon Arnett because I think he'll slide to the back end of the second round, which will be good value for them. And they'll pick him with the thought process of specifically playing the slot corner role. They'll move out of that base 4-3 defense that they stood in too much throughout last year. They'll flip back to playing nickel 65% of the time, and he'll be your starting nickel cornerback at that point. Hey pal, have you had Seahawks? Hey pal, have you got a chance to look at McTelvin again? I watched him last night, Seahawks. I watched him last night, and he's a 6th, 7th round prospect. So you guys remember Zoolander? If you guys, I'm showing my age here. God, am I showing my age? There's a movie in Zoolander, and there's a character, the name Zoolander in it, and he can't turn left. It's just a problem for him throughout the movie. It becomes this big plot point. He's a runway model and he can't turn left. He can only go right. This guy can only go left. So if you watch McTelvin again on tape, he will come off the ball, he'll dip his shoulder, and he'll go up into the right shoulder of the guard each and every single time. Like that's his patented move. He's going with it. If it doesn't work, he doesn't have anything else for you. He's just got that. Every single time, one trick pony. Now, every once in a while, it does work. Is it going to work at the next level when offensive linemen know that's his only real move? Probably not. Is it going to be enough to generate you instant rush at the next level? I don't really see it. He gave up on plays. Let me look at my I just literally did it last night on him, so that's why it's like fresh in my mind. It's super fresh in my mind. Yeah, I called him in this draft that he's the poor man's Javon Kinlaw on the surface of things. So somebody picks him and they go, oh, he's a poor man's Javon Kinlaw. We'll get a lot of what we got with Kinlaw, but we can get him in the 4th, 5th, 6th round or so. He has no idea how to use his hands. Goes to the same dip and bend left. Yep, that's the same thing. He doesn't play with a lot of passion. Doesn't play like a Seahawk player. I didn't see him going with his hair on fire. He would give up on plays. He'd get to that point where he's just sort of standing around, letting the play get by him really, really fast. He played a lot. He played one tech there for Arkansas, but he wasn't really able to handle the double teams. So the one tech always needs to be able to take on those double teams, and he needs to hold up at the point of attack. Doesn't need to generate pressure. He doesn't need to split the double teams. It's great if he can do that. But what you need him to do is to hold up at the point of attack. Don't get pushed backwards. This guy got pushed backwards on double teams. So to me, that's where I extrapolate him being a 3 tech at the next level. But then he's only got the shoulder bend move that he goes to every single time, which isn't going to be wasn't that effective in college and is not going to be very effective in the pros. So not super much there on Mr. McTelvin. Shaquem, I'm happy Brandon Cooks is gone. I'm not. I want him to carry all that money on the cap, and the guy's going to keep having concussions, so he's not going to be on the field very much. They got out of that money, and as far as I'm concerned, they got, the Texans, like they did the favor for the Cardinals with that stupid Hopkins move. Now they're doing a favor to the Rams. It's aggravating as hell. There's been one aggravating offseason in that respect at times, where you're just seeing like, don't help them. Don't help them. That's what I keep thinking in my mind. Like, Bill O'Brien, are you so mad at us about the Clowney trade that you got to get us back by just giving away your team to other NFC West foes? What's up, James? James Glenn, welcome on into the chat. Shaquem Wagner gone. Did I miss something, Shaquem? You'll have to repeat, Shaquem. I think I might have missed something. What's up, D Nugget? Boom Shakalaka. Is Fournette the most Seahawk running back in the league? I can't see it resisting the temptation. I can't either, especially when I feel like the asking price probably at its highest. At the highest asking price, if we just remove Unique Ngakoue, I can't feel like he's going to cost more than a third to fourth rounder, and probably more likely than not a fourth rounder would be the value for him. I got no issues at $4 million next year and a fourth round pick. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And yeah, he is the most Seahawk running back in the league. Boom Shakalaka. You hit the nail on the head. Maybe Ezekiel Elliott, if he's still in his prime and running like he was running a couple of years ago, would maybe be even a little more. But I love Fournette coming out of the draft. I've thought I know he's been up and down a little bit with the Jaguars, but he still is a great talent, and he'd be a perfect fit for this offense. He's the type of put his foot in the ground and go upfield, come downhill on everybody and just smash and crash, just what you want. So he'd be a perfect fit for us. Fuki, yeah, I heard rumors of trading Penny to the Jets for picks. I'm okay with them doing that, Fuki. Look, I like Penny, I really do, and he does have a lot of upside left in him. The problem is he's not really. I talk about a scheme fit with Fournette. Penny's not a scheme fit for us. You got to get Penny on the outside, let him work in space, have some inventiveness to the way you run your offense. With us, we're just kind of, we want to hammer it up the middle. We just want to wear you down, and so he's not exactly the right fit for that. No worries, Emmett. I appreciate you dropping on in. We will see you on Thursday, my man. Shervins, Bradley and A. All right, so you watch Bradley and A's tape. I want to say it's against BYU. I want to say it is. And you're like, holy hell, look at this guy. This is amazing. This is a second round pick. Like he looks dynamic. He like I talked about that mean nastiness that was missing from McTelvin again. This guy's got it. He plays with a chip on his shoulder, all those Seahawky type traits that they tend to look for. But then you watch his other tape and he just kind of disappears. He's high on a lot of people's charts. I believe he doesn't have necessarily the longest arms. I got to go back and look at it. And arm length is very important for pass rushers for Seattle. They've got their kind of minimum 33-inch standard in place for that. But I didn't quite see just the consistency I wanted to see. The BYU tape looks great. If he plays like that most of the time, if that's what you're getting as a prospect, then late second round, I'm happy with it. I had him actually as a guy I almost wrote in for what I want for what I thought the Seahawks were going to do as their pass rush in this draft in my mock draft, but I just couldn't quite go there with him. I think he's just not quite enough of a great athlete for Seattle and what they tend to look for in that position to pick him. Fuki Buki, I don't know. I always thought Derrick Henry was a very Seahawks running back. Derrick Henry would be a Seahawks fit. The problem with Derrick Henry and the problem why he's not a fit on this team is the Seahawks zone blocking scheme doesn't often create huge holes. And the thing with Henry, because he's so big and he's got those long legs, he needs to get up his build-up speed. So when he gets into the line of scrimmage, he needs the hole to be there. Now, if there's a hole there, he's going to not only take that hole, but he's going to go 50, 60 yards down the field because he's just running like a horse at that point. The problem is if he gets guys coming into the backfield, if he's got to do a dip shake move or jump cut to get around a guy and slow himself down, it takes a lot of time for him to get those legs going back up to speed. You're not getting that quickness there. Well, what I've seen from recent Seattle offensive lines and what we can probably project with the future Seahawks offensive line this next season is while they'll be able to create some running lanes and they'll be mildly, decently effective in the run game, they're not just going to go out there and do what the Titans have done in recent years, because the Titans have 2 first-round picks on each tackle, and they have a lot of capital in the interior as well that they've invested. So you've got to invest in that line to get it to that point where it's good enough to open up those big holes to take advantage of Henry's strengths, which is his home run ability. But I don't know that you would be able to do that with Seattle just because of the offensive issues we kind of have. When do you think we will make it back to the Super Bowl realistically? When we go for it. When we truly take a year and we decide we've got to go for it this season, balls out, no holding back, all in, pick whatever metaphor you want to use, that's when they're going to go back. If they want to tread water and be consistently good, you'll be consistently good. When you want to search and try to go be great again and really be great, then they've shown in the past they can get there when they're that way, when they're operating with that aggressive mentality. They go to ask, what do you think about Raekwon Davis? Raekwon Davis is a guy that, again, just a lot of the issues I talked about with McTelvin are there with him as well. I didn't see as much, nasty fight there on the interior as I'd like to see. He's a one tech there for Alabama, but again, everyone if you go read his line and what they say about him as far as the scouting metrics online and everything, it's like, handles, holds up against double teams, splits double teams, stands his ground against double teams. I didn't see it consistently. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. I didn't see anything as far as pass rush goes. And that's where people try to draw the comparisons to Campbell, Calais Campbell. But the guy doesn't get to the quarterback enough for me to just prognosticate that onto the next level and say I can see him being a 5 to 12 sack a year guy from the interior position. I just don't see it, much less the guy I can kick to the outside is like maybe a 5 technique. Not enough wow factor to his game for me to be looking to pick him in the second round. Fiji Mark, David Moore did just resign, but it's not a guaranteed contract. So as I understand it, that $2.1 million can be cut at any time. And I would still say, Shaquem, that we're probably going to, at the end of the day, be cutting him when all things bear out by the start of the year. Just because I think they're going to need that money for other places. Could be wrong on this, but that's my soft prediction on it. So the GOAT says Leonard Fournette, Yannick Ngakoue in a trade for Penny plus a first and a second. I'd be okay with that. You're sitting on at that point. I don't know. I don't know if I like all that, actually. That might be a little too much for me. I need to give up less than that. Because they're essentially getting what was a first rounder 2 years ago, first this year. Like even the trade that was put out there for Yannick, Fournette doesn't have that kind of value. Running backs don't carry that kind of value in trade returns. Who's the most likely player on our current roster to get traded? Good question. It's a really good question. I'm gonna go with Bradley McDougall, because I think Bradley McDougall is a cut candidate because his salary is he's out of his bonus. I think you could save a little bit of money by cutting him. You're not stacked at the safety position, but if you went out and drafted another safety, as somebody mentioned, Grant Delpit or someone else, now you've got him kind of in the crosshairs. What's really the long-term plan with Bradley on this team? You love what you got out of Quandre Diggs. You still have him on contract for a couple years. You've got Marquise Blair as your up-and-coming guy. Like, he is a little bit to me of an odd man out, as good as he has played over the last couple of years. He's not a superstar. He's not really a Pro Bowler. He's just an upper level player there for you at the safety position, which I think that, you go get a 4th, 5th rounder for him or something in that lens. Seattle probably ends up doing that around training camp, that kind of move or something along those lines. I don't think it's likely to happen, but you asked me for a player. I don't think there's another player likely to really be traded. Maybe Chris Carson other than him. Tyron Matthau or Earl Thomas, the GOAT says. Are you asking who I'd rather have now or who I'd rather have all time? All time, of course, Earl. So my early prediction for the 2020 season, and again, this is the positive podcast, so I'm not going negative here. I'm just saying what it is. When we started out the offseason, I anticipated Seattle recognizing that they were this close to getting to the Super Bowl and that they should really go for it this offseason. All the chips into the center of the table. We really haven't kind of seen that though, have we? They've certainly spent some money. They've made some moves, but nothing that's going to necessarily reinvent the wheel or, in my estimation, do what I was looking for them to do at the start of the last offseason. I say this because if you would have, when you guys polled me at the end of the Packer game, I said, I see this team as a 13-3 team next year and winning the division. Right now, I see them as an 11-5 team. And the pass rush is the big, really, to me, part of that. It's just not been improved enough. I know that I mentioned here's how they can cobble it together. I don't think you're going to be able to cobble it together, though. I don't think that that's really going to work. It could work, but there was a better route to go than this, and they just chose kind of not to go with it on that. Tobias, it concerns me that we haven't hit a top draft pick since Wilson or Bobby. Look at the 49ers. Bosa's top 5 pass rusher. George Kittle in the 5th round is a top player. Armstead is great. We need something. Don't forget, Tobias, the thing with the Niners and those guys you mentioned, Armstead and Bosa. I mean, Bosa is a top 2 pick in the draft. Armstead, I believe, is a top 7 pick. We haven't picked in the top 7 in 10, 11 years. When you're picking up in that area, you can get some good players. I would argue that, Will Disley is probably very similar to the player of George Kittle, if not maybe potentially even a superior player to Kittle, who you also got in the 5th round. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. But the talent is there on him. We can certainly see that. So I don't know if the Niners have necessarily outdrafted us necessarily, or that we've drafted poor. We had a poor section of drafts from about 2015, 2016, 2017, where you really were kind of just, let's face it, crap in the bed. You sort of just pooed all over yourself as far as the guys you were picking. They've been better recently though. DK Metcalf was pretty darn good last year. I mean, that looks like a Pro Bowler moving forward in the Hall of Fame. Lockett's been pretty good. Shaquille Griffin's developing. They have found some guys. What's up, Ethan? Welcome on into the chat. Shervins, I don't think I said what's up to you earlier. Callum McKay, what is up, man? Do I think we will re-sign Clowney? Callum, I don't. I think at this point in time, it looks like Clowney is on his way out. That's what all the rumors and innuendos and all that stuff has been saying. And I just, my gut's saying that as well. And the Logan Ryan news was kind of the deal breaker here for me when you're hearing there's interest from the Jets and Logan Ryan, because the Jets will probably be looking to trade Jamal Adams. So it's the domino of Adams gets moved, the Jets go for Logan Ryan, Clowney then goes to the Titans, who now have some freed up cap space to go out there and meet his asking price. What round would you bet on Seattle drafting a receiver? 2nd round. That's who I've got him in the mock draft picking. So I've got to stay with that. You got 2 picks in the 2nd round. Where you'll be picking in the 4th. Where you'll be picking in the 4th, you may not have the same talent available there. It's a deep wide receiver draft. There'll be some good ones. But the upper level ones, you could really get the prime guys who I was telling you guys, who you want the guy who, if something happens to Lockett or Metcalf, they go down, you put this guy in and it doesn't feel like you really miss a beat like we have in the past when we've lost receivers. So, and you want an outside guy specifically, not a slot guy. So that's where, to me, that would be the best place to fit. And that's where I'd put my money if I was guessing. Ethan Williams says, watch some Brian Edwards and Quintez Cephas. They're slow but strong receivers on Twitter. DK says he wants to play with those two. So Ethan, in my first, I've done 2. This was my 2nd mock draft today for the Seahawks. My first mock draft, I had them taking Brian Edwards in the 3rd round. So I've watched a lot of Brian Edwards tape. I know everybody likes to say CeeDee Lamb is the best contested catcher in this draft, or that T. Higgins is the best contested catcher in this draft. I might have my money maybe on Brian Edwards. And again, that's just when you're talking about the guy who's a big-bodied guy, moves well. He doesn't look slow. He's got great game speed. when you see that that'd be a great fit for me with Russell and what Russell does. I think he'd be an awesome fit here. You could even see him potentially in that second round, but I think because he's got some injury stuff that's kind of hampered him this offseason, lack of being able to do, I think, the pro day and stuff, you're probably going to see him fall into the third round, which I think would definitely be if he's in the third round for Seattle, they're going to take a long, hard look at the guy. Make no mistake. Quinton Cephas is a very intriguing guy. One of the guys I'm going to watch a lot of tape on here this week. I believe he pounded out like 26 reps at the combine. I mean, and he's fast. He was one of the guys that actually ran well at the combine as well. Like he came prepared and he hit the ground running. So I like him a lot as well. I will look at him a little bit more. I've watched like the highlight tape, but I like to watch the game film on him just to get the full kind of feel for the guy. Tobias Larson says, if we flip back to playing nickel, like you pointed out, who do you think is going to be the starters at linebacker, and who do you want to start? Yeah, Tobias, I echo your fears. I think that if KJ does look like KJ is staying on the roster, and if KJ is on the roster, he's not getting moved off the starter position, which is unfortunate because I think Cody has earned the right and is a better probably player at this point over at the will linebacker position. With that said, you're going to see Bruce Irvin at the Sam linebacker, which I actually do like. I don't want to see Cody Barton over at the Sam where he's got to take on the tight end and try to set the edge. Let's let Bruce go over there and do that. Bruce did that just fine back in the 2000 whatever time. So 2012. So let Bruce slip back into that role and it'll be a natural fit for him. Randall McDaniel, Derek Tusk, defensive end, North Dakota. If so, thoughts? I watched just a very sparingly little bit. Randall, again, just a highlight on him. He's on my list though. So I promise you, I'll get more of a feel for him. I was going through some of these end guys on the defensive tackle, but I'm sliding back out to defensive end kind of, I think tonight. I'll watch him tonight, actually. Tusk. I'll write that down. But I remember it was the highlight tape was great. Obviously highlight tapes always show you, look pretty darn good. The only issue too is North Dakota it's the one issue you get at times with watching those guys. Like, man, the level of competition. How do I extrapolate this onto the next level? It's really easy to watch Alabama's or SEC teams playing other SEC teams and going football. There's NFL players all over that football field. I can see one challenging the other and knowing what one is. But when you got a guy dominating, out of Appalachian State or North Dakota, it gets a little hard with that. But I will look at his stuff. I promise. Brian is going to thrive in the NFL. Really good technique for that size, Juno. I agree, Juno. I loved his tape. You really go watch Brian's tape. He's not a guy talked about. There's all these flashy guys spoken about. But he's just a guy that, like you said, he will translate at the next level. He's going to be a good pro and with potential, even upper level, play from there. You're not just necessarily getting a starter or a guy who's decent, but it could be a guy that really does push to move into that star territory. You watch his tape and he's making highlight reel catches all over the place. He's got a huge catch radius. Seems like his arms are like go gadget arms. I like him a lot. He's one of my favorite receivers in this draft. Shaquem, I'm from Idaho where Curtis Weaver played. Yeah, Curtis Weaver's a guy that, Curtis Weaver's a guy like I relate him with AJ Epinesa in a lot of respects. They're not guys that at the combine, they're going to wow you. They're not going to give you a lot of, flashy short shuttle drills and three cones and all that other stuff. But when you turn on the tape, they produce. They just get to the quarterback one way or the other. And they have a plan. They execute the plan. And that's part of the reason why with both those two guys, I say with them, when you draft them, it's not going to get anybody in a fan base super excited. It's not going to blow anybody's dress up. But what you are going to probably get with both of those two players right out the box is some pass rushing production, i.e. in that range of probably 5 to 8 sacks in their rookie year. And you can't really usually always get that from these defensive line prospects. Most defensive ends, most edge rushers take a little bit of time to develop to get to that 6, 7, 8 sack, 10 sack range. Take a guy like, Rasheem Green, who we're watching his development come along. He goes from 0-1 sacks in his first year, gets up to 4 last year. You see him starting to take that incremental step. Some of these guys just come out the box as is what they are. Now, what that also means on the reverse side of that, of course, is that the ceiling comes down to the floor pretty quick. And you've got what you got, and that is they are what they are, and they'll always be just kind of that. That is a little bit of what it is with Weaver and them. But we need pass rush. We need guys getting the quarterback by any means necessary at this point. And Weaver would do that, into the late second round. Boom Shakalaka asks, what would Bill O'Brien give up for J.J. Watt? He would not give up J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt is entrenched at in Texas. He's a part of that community. The floods happened. He was there raising millions. He's not going anywhere. He will retire a Houston Texan. What would they want in return? I just don't think it would happen. It's not only not likely to happen. It's just, there's some players that are just such fixtures of an organization. The organization's just not going to, you're just not going to see them anywhere else. You saw that with a guy like Eli Manning, it's just like, it's not going to happen. But the price, I can't fathom it. So it's hard for me to even come up with what the price would be. I would imagine that they would want a second rounder in return, but it's Bill O'Brien. So he'll probably ask for a fourth rounder in next year's draft. What do you think of the card? Ben Lag, what's on up, man? What do you think the Cards getting Hopkins? Do you think he will be a game changer, or will his talent be wasted? It was a smart pickup by the Cardinals. The scuttlebutt seems to be with DeAndre Hopkins, and I do have some inside sources on this, but I am not giving him up. The scuttlebutt on Hopkins seems to be that he was a little bit of a problem child in the background. That while his production was great come game day, there was a little bit of he was a little bit of a, those receivers they're a little bit of divas, and sometimes, the Antonio Browns and the Terrell Owens, and I'm not trying to put him in that category, but they all have kind of every receiver's got little touches of that. It seems like there's just to varying degrees. So he kind of wore out, I think, a little bit of his welcome overall there. With that said, on the field, the production is what it is, and he is an absolute nightmare against our scheme specifically. Go back and watch the Houston Texans game against the Seattle Seahawks in, I think, 2017. I want to say he had over 200 yards receiving in that game. And he's an intermediate route runner. The 10 to 15, 20-yard routes is where he kills you. He's not going to be a guy's burning you on the outside. And the Cardinal offense, with all of the targets they have, it's going to make it really hard to double him up. And because they spread everything out as well, and you got to have, if you go to man and that type of thing, it's just even, that makes it even more difficult to kind of get a second guy on him. I think it's going to be a problem. I think he's going to have a lot of production against us. And I think he's not the ideal receiver that we want playing us. We'd rather be playing against the burner type because our scheme has the high safety over the top to protect against that. But the underneath stuff, you can get us with that a little bit. What do you think of the Cards getting on? Do you think he'll be a game changer? Yeah, I think it will be a game changer though, Ben. He will. I think he's going to up that offense and make them very dynamic. I'm really liking John Unch and not Yeater anymore. I like both of them, Ethan. I know Yeater's got his share of detractors out there that don't like the inconsistency of his tape. Part of what you're going for in a first round pick at the end of our first round is you are going for upside and potential. It's great to draft for floor, but for me, I draft for floor in the second, third, fourth, fifth round. I'm drafting for upside and ceiling in the first round. And that is what he has, is that. John Unch is a guy that, again, Josh Unch, I can't pronounce his name all of a sudden. But yeah, he's good as well. A guy you can line him up all over your scheme, left, right side, maybe even float him inside, line him up as a linebacker and have him blitz. He's going to be very adept at all those things and give you production right out the gate because of it. He'll probably produce more than potentially Yeater out the gate, but I think Yeater is a better prospect long term. Even you're going to have to sell me on Okawara. I've watched a lot of his tape, and I just can't quite get there with him. I get that he's got the speed and all that. I can understand it, but he doesn't quite push the buttons for me. You know what I mean? He just not quite there. Thoughts on my mock. Traded back twice. Got Jeff Gladney, Zach Bond, Devon Hamilton, Alex Highsmith, Van Jefferson, Charlie Heck, Robert Hunt. Wow, you got Hunt. How the hell did you get Hunt? You'll need to explain it a little bit more, Brendan, on what you did on the getting Hunt, where you picked up Hunt. It was looking realistic until I got to Robert Hunt. I'm like, wait a second here. How'd you get all of these guys? Maybe that works if you didn't. I like it. I watched Hunt's tape last night as well. Again, another guy who's playing at a small, Louisiana State college. So, it's another one where you're really trying to go, okay, I can see him going against prime rushers and still being able to do this. I don't know. Can I see him doing that? Yeah, maybe. But he's a good prospect, solid. Jeff Gladney, I spoke about him on the draft profile we did with the cornerbacks. I love Jeff Gladney. I think he's got the best feet in the draft. He's a dancer out there. He's literally, watch his tape, and his feet are like little typewriter. Remember old? I know your younger generation don't know what typewriters are, but his feet move like the typewriter keys. It's always moving, so he can go in any direction at any point and change his direction at any point because his feet are so good. So he just gets on top of guys. And quarterbacks were just, I had to watch like 6 of his games because quarterbacks just wouldn't throw at him. They just wouldn't throw at him. So it was hard to get a feel for, is he really this good or is he just scaring the hell out of all these guys? But I wouldn't be a bad draft. Zach Bond, I like Zach a lot, multifaceted. He can do a lot of things for you. He's probably going to be missing the length and the suddenness Seattle wants as a pass rusher. Devon Hamilton, I believe you get the one technique in there. The guys can stop the run. Probably you could make an argument in this draft as him being the best run stuffer in this draft. And a couple of those guys I don't know about. Reggie Robinson I love. He's great too. Very Seahawky type player at cornerback. A lot of upside and potential with that guy. And Alex Highsmith, I've got to watch a little bit more on. Van Jefferson is maybe potentially next to Brandon Ayuk, the best route runner in this draft out of the receivers. Really polished guy. He's going to give you a guy who can do a lot of things for you right out the gate. James Glenn, Jonathan Greenyard is becoming my favorite pass rusher. I liked your mock, by the way, Brendan. I like your mock overall. So I would be happy with that. You've improved your team and you filled in needs as you needed to fill them in places you needed them. So, the tough part with Jeff Gladney, though, of course, is that at that point, you're going to be sitting with your teams having Jeff Gladney and Trey Flowers sitting on the bench at the very same time. It's tough to have both those players at that point having to be sitting over there. James Glenn, Jonathan Greenyard is one of the guys on my list this week I got to watch more on. I watched his highlight. You're right, relentless. I like his second effort abilities at getting to the quarterback. If his first pass rush move isn't working, he can go to his second move like that and get into the quarterback. I really liked a lot of that, but I do need to watch some more tape on him as well. But he's an intriguing guy because he's another one of those guys who fits into that category. You got the categories of pass rushers who are really good, like Yetur Gross-Matos, that might not give you production right out the gate, but then have the huge upside. And then, like I said, the Curtis Weavers types that are meat and potatoes. That they're going to get you something right from the jump. And Greenyard looks like that kind of guy. Jason McEward says, I'm hoping Carroll and Schneider have saved their best moves for this Saturday to give us all something to be excited about, put the finishing touches on our team. I've been feeling that way, Jason, as well. I don't know if you're hoping or feeling it, but I've been feeling that that's what's going on. You've thought this whole offseason that there's just some other last move to come, that there's some big thing to happen that just hasn't happened because of the COVID or just the odd nature of this off season in general, but that it is sitting there waiting to happen. I remain hopeful. I remain vigilant, thinking it will. We'll see. They've got the draft capital to move around. They've got some moves they could make with guys like, rumored Rashad Penny being out there potentially to be traded for. So there's some guys there's some things you could move around with. You could. It's going to be exciting. You think Marshawn will come back? I haven't heard anything about it, but I haven't been looking. Welcome on in the chat, Peyton. I think it's probably not likely Marshawn comes back unless there's a huge plethora of injuries at the running position. Now, with that said, for the last 3 or 4 years at the running back position, we've seen a plethora of injuries at the running back position. So it's been one of those ones, because you run that inside zone and those guys get hammered a lot, and you run so often that they carry a lot, they have a lot of touches, you go through your running backs a lot. It just is the way it is. Not everybody's built like Marshawn to take that punishment. So I think he's going to be in our back pocket, our side hip, and in Carroll's holster. And if he's got a call on him, and at the end of the year, he'll pull that big gun out of the holster and let him go at it again. But I think that they're going to make a move for another running back, and you got Homer coming back, and if Penny doesn't get traded, he's back in there with Carson. There's going to be a lot of guys out the gate that they're not going to feel as much of a need. Very Harry Larry, what's on up, man? Welcome on into the chat. Yeah, Ben, I think I answered that one. Have you published your mock humor? I'd be so frustrated if it looked like Rob Stanton's new mock, even though it probably accurate. Yeah, I think I saw Rob's recent one. I wasn't in love with it myself. I haven't posted it yet. I'll go through the line. I'll go through the picks again of who I think they're going for. And again, I've got 2 mock drafts. I've got the mock draft of what I think the Seahawks will do and what I would like to see the Seahawks actually do. If it was me running the team, if it was Hawks Nest, general manager Hawks Nest. Thanks, Internet, man. I'm hope to be potentially back over on that east side soon. So hopefully. Robert Pennington says 3 firsts for Chase Young. I'm on board. You had me at Chase. Randall McDaniel, what's up? Fiji Mark, is Josh Gordon come back? There's a lot of uncertainty regarding Josh Gordon if he's coming back. By all measure, it appears that there was something in addition to the marijuana hit that he got on his urine substance. There might have been PEDs or something else along the line. We don't have any certainty on the situation. Everybody's kind of guessing at this point, but I would think he's going to be back probably around mid-season to maybe the later parts of next season. We'll see how it all goes down, but I think that would be my prediction. Randall says, what I'd like to see with draft is, unless Gross Matos, Epinesa, or another defensive law, Kinlaw fall. Yeah, we'd always love to see Kinlaw fall. If Kinlaw falls to 27 and we are able to pick him up, I'll do handstands on my live stream. Assuming trade back, give Russ weapon. Yeah, I think Russ needs another weapon as well. I'd like to see the skills positions just invigorated a little bit more with, one more pass catcher. Or even a joker tight end. You've got Hollister as your joker tight end right now, that move tight end. Let's get, if they went with Hunter Bryant, a guy I didn't like a lot in the early draft process here, and I still don't love, but I have to acknowledge the fact that he is he is a fit to what they need in this scheme, and he would be an upgrade over Hollister. So I wouldn't be as worried about his lack of size too, because the joker position tends to be a little bit undersized. But not a bad way to go, Randall. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that one. The GOAT, how many third-round picks do we have? We have 1 third-round pick, the compensatory pick that will come at the very end of the 3rd round. Jeremy Bohm, Terrell Lewis opinion, Nelvin Gallimore opinion. So Terrell Lewis is an interesting guy. A guy who, again, people have definitely mocked to us a bunch. And I'm grabbing my notes out on him so I can make sure that it's been so many prospects. Yeah. So he's got the things that jumps out at me about, the first thing that jumps out at me about Terrell Lewis is this. He really looks to me like a 3-4 outside linebacker. It gets very easy for people in this draft process to take a 3-4 guy and say, well, he'll fit perfectly into a 4-3 scheme. It just doesn't always really tend to be the case. More often than not, these guys can fit into one or they can't fit into the other. I've used recently Robert Quinn as a great example of this. Robert Quinn had a good start to his career with the Rams, a great start to his career with the Rams as a 4-3 defensive end. He then went to the Miami Dolphins, who changed schemes right after he signed. He went to a 3-4 stand-up linebacker. He was pretty much neutralized in that role. It removed all of his effectiveness. And then he went back to the Cowboys and reclaimed that magic to sign this big contract this last offseason. So I mentioned that because that's the number one thing that jumps out to me as I look through it in the prism of Seattle potentially drafting him. It's hard for me to see them picking a guy who's such a fit like that. You saw the guy from Chicago, the pass rusher who went out in the open market this offseason, and Seattle didn't sniff him. Again, very similar kind of looking player to Terrell Lewis in a lot of respects. I just think he'll fit more into that 3-4 scheme. He doesn't have a great get off from what I saw. It was Leonard Floyd. That's who he reminds me of. He's like a poor man's Leonard Floyd, Terrell Lewis, I think. He's got a little bit longer arms, but he does look really thin. So he has a hard time out there setting the edge. I think he'll be okay at the next level in a 3-4, but I don't think he's going to be a star. He does have a really underrated inside counter move that could be actually kind of deadly for him at the next level because he really does challenge tackles at the edge. So when he comes back into the counter on them, it really catches these tackles off guard, and he's able to go to it a lot throughout the game. And every single time he goes to it, it's like they're in his back pocket to rip to it whenever he wants. But just not enough of again, if you want to be a Seattle Seahawks pass rusher on the edge, they usually like those dynamic athletes. Bruce Irvin, Chris Clemens, Cliff Averill, Jadeveon Clowney. They want explosiveness, and he's just not as explosive for me. Caden Cooper, welcome to the chat. What's up, man? I appreciate that, Shaquem. I can't wait for draft day either. I'm gonna be just chomping at the bit come the end of the week. I appreciate that though, man. I think if available, Clavon Chason is the pick. Well, look, Clavon Chason is the closest thing in this draft to Bruce Irvin. I know, as I mentioned, a comparison to Irvin on another guy in John Unch. John Unch is a little bit like Irvin. Chason is pretty much exactly like Irvin. And he's a divisive guy. I'm not as down on him as some other people are, because people go, well, he had this horrible pass rush win rate. Most of his sacks came by stunts. What is he really? What is he really? What is he really going to get you at the next level? But because they go, okay, he just looks like a great athlete, but I think he's going to be a good pass rusher at the next level. I do. I watched a lot of LSU tape because there were so many guys to watch, and I liked what I saw from the guy. Going back in? Okay, come on. I liked what I saw from the guy. I think he's solid. But again, he is a divisive prospect. Brendan Eichrick, Cephas ran a 4.73, but he screwed up the start. Not a track guy, but then ran 4.56 at a pro day. Yeah, that's going to drop him some. That's for sure. I like the thought of having a bulky receiver out there blocking. This is why I love part of liking having DK Metcalf out there, because if you're going to be a running team, right, you do want some receivers out on the outside that can take the cornerback and push him down the field. It's kind of helpful, right? Because once the running back gets into the second and third level of the defense, now he's fully clear. That cornerback doesn't enter back into frame to run him down. It's a touchdown. I like the thought of having that. And I think that you think with that guy and his strength, I haven't watched a lot on his tape, but you think he'd be a pretty decent blocker. But he's probably, with the depth of this drafted wide receiver, he is a guy that's going to fall probably into the, fifth, sixth round. How high are you on Poona Ford? Do you think he can be a Pro Bowler? I don't think Poona Ford's going to be a Pro Bowler. I think he's going to be a solid pro, one of the better one-tech, run-stuffing defensive tackles in the league. Not star level, just one of the better ones, which is just fine. You need that on your team. There's a place for that on our team, but I don't think he's ever really going to give you the pass rush past a sack or two a year. Shervin's David Moore did just sign his tender, but I don't believe the contract is guaranteed. So if anything comes down the track, they can release him at any time, I believe. I could be wrong on that. Can I give you some of my predictions for I think the top receivers will be drafted? Sure, absolutely. So we know right now at this point that Jerry Jeudy's probably going to go in the top 12 picks, and CeeDee Lamb's probably going to go a couple picks past that point. From there, it's the Henry Ruggs is the interesting one. Is someone going to jump above those two guys to take Ruggs, let's say, in that top 7, because they're valuing that speed so much? But Ruggs is going to be picked right in that lens of things. I still am not buying the hype that Ruggs goes before Jeudy. I think he does still go after Jeudy at the end of the day. I don't know about Lamb, but I think they're all going to go in a cluster of picks. You'll start to see a run of wide receivers right in the teens, in my opinion. from there, I've got to get my list. Make sure I'm going down to my list of them. But from there, I think you'll see then after those kind of clump of three guys, then you'll get into the back half of the 20s. And then that's the next probably run of where you'll see the Jalen Reagor types. Brandon Ayuk is probably in that realm. You know, those drafted guys. I need my list of receivers. Hold on, let me. Oh, I forgot Denzel Mims. Denzel Mims is going to go in the first round, y'all. Believe that. I truly believe Denzel Mims is going in the first round. So I think there'll be 4 first-round receivers, and then you'll get the next guys, kind of the next slots coming through, where you'll get the Laviska Shenaults, Higgins, Jalen Reagors. Those type of guys will be in that late first, early second round range. But then you'll see about 8, probably 7 to 8 receivers taken in the first 15, from pick number 27 in the first round till the second round and 15. You're going to be about 7 or 8 receivers are going to go in that range, if not more. So if Seattle wants to get a receiver, there will be one available there at the second round there where their first pick happens at the top of the second round, but there's going to be a lot of the talent drained by that point. So if they want to get any of the top level guys, then that's where they've got to pick in at. Same thing you saw with kind of last year. Last year, very similar wide receiver draft as far as depth and quality goes, where they had to come back in to get DK and at the end of the second round. Very similar. So I don't have them exactly slotted, Shervins, yet as to where I would see the receivers go exactly, but I see that group going in that range. Randall McDaniel says, Willie Gay is intriguing, blew up the combine, not the tallest guy, but a missile, maybe a third round. And somebody asked about my mock draft. I will say it again here. I don't have anywhere that I have it posted, but I'll post my mock here in the description section when we're done. If you want to reference that. But Willie Gay is great. Not only is he a missile, Randall, but he plays with some of that ferocity that I want to see, from a potential Seattle Seahawks prospect. I loved his film. Absolutely a third rounder. I don't know if he's going to last that long, though. I think he's getting a lot of late game hype that might push him up into the second round. But late third, if he's there, the value is there. The values would be great. Nathaniel Parks, what's up, man? How you doing? John Staff, Josh Gordon, Al Woods suspension cost us the Super Bowl. Seemed very understated by analysts. I would agree with you on that. I would almost point more to the Al Woods than the Josh Gordon. The Josh Gordon hurt because you had lost Disley and you were missing this dynamicness in your offense, and it was apparent right from the second you lost Disley. And then once he kind of came back into play, it seemed like he was sort of able to pick up that slack. So it definitely hurt, but I would point to the Al Woods one being really that was the nail in my estimation. And the reason being is that you were not great at stopping the run throughout the year, but he was the one guy at one tech who was able to kind of hold up at the point of attack and to give you some juice in there and to actually not just let teams come downhill at you all day long like they kind of were able to. And I felt like he was the biggest loss at that point. Did it cost us the Super Bowl? Well, yeah, you can make the argument. You stop the run better in those games. You're that much better against the 49ers when you were this close to winning that game. You win that game, you get the home field advantage. You're in a different scenario. So yeah, you could certainly make the argument that I don't know about the Gordon, but with the Al Woods one, you certainly could make the argument that one was the bridge too far for us to overcome. Yeah, Bill O'Brien is absolutely crazy, and I don't know how long the Texans are going to allow him to burn that organization to the ground. But you notice as well they still haven't signed Laramie Tunsil, the guy that gave up all that draft capital to the Miami Dolphins. And now you should have a ton of cap space. Still haven't signed him to a contract. You're going to put him on the franchise tag next year. They're being run. He's running them like a moron down there. Boy, I think I'm behind on my comments. Sorry, guys and girls. What's up, Passionate? How you doing, man? Yeah, it does say something, Fuki, that the Hawks don't have Bill O'Brien running things. Thank God for that. It's got to be brutal to be a Texans fan right now. Well, Shervins, I would say that LJ Collier was actually supposed to be a guy that's not really an upside guy. He was a guy that was supposed to give you floor out the gate. He was a 24-year-old prospect who was supposed to be able to give you run stuffing, 5 technique minimum. And you weren't going to expect a lot from him pass rush wise. Maybe it would develop as it came along, but that you were expecting him to be an upper level run stuffer at the defensive end position. And he really wasn't that. Recreating UMad Go game on Madden Online. Up 14-0 on this guy. Nice, Shaquem. Get him. Robert Hunt is ranked 153 in the PFN mock draft simulator, even though I really like him. Yeah, Brandon, I think he's, the guys that get the white hot heat a week before the draft or right as it's leading into the draft, the buildup tends to be legit and they tend to be selected really high. He's going to be picked in the second round. And I would estimate that he's probably picked in the top half of the second round at that. Which it would scare me to pick a guy from Louisiana State there. He walls off well. He's got the thing he does really well is he understands where if the hole's going to be at his back on a play, he can really wall himself off from the defender well to where he gives his running back that lane, just a nice clean lane, and the defender just can't do much with it. Once he gets that back to you and locks you in, you're done. It's pretty impressive. But again, he's doing it at Louisiana State. Blaze, what's up, man? Welcome on into the chat. Team 12s, always good to see you, man. What if we trade down in the 33 spot and draft a lineman, then draft pass rushers with our second rounder, and finally another O lineman with our last second rounder? Okay, well, that's fairly close to probably what I think will probably happen, Team 12s. You're not far off my mock, which I've lost my place on, but you're not far off my mock. That's pretty much what I had them doing as far as where I'd like to see them go. So, I can't knock that apart. If they go that route, you can certainly grab some safe pass rushers at that point who are going to be able to give you some pass rush. And then you're going to definitely be able to find some, sorry, I'm trying to find my spot here, guys. And then you're definitely going to be able to find some offensive linemen as well who are going to be an upgrade over what you already have. But what I've got currently, I know some of you already heard the mock here, but I'll go through it just fast. I've got Seattle trading back out of the first round to get into the top of the second to pick up an extra third-round pick. I've got them taking in the first round Ezra Cleveland. In the second round, I've got them taking Damon Arnett as a slot cornerback starter. In the next second-round pick, I have them taking Jalen Rieger from TCU. In the third round, I've got them taking Cam Akers. And then with the additional third-round pick, I also have them taking Nelvin Gallimore out of Oklahoma. Logan Stenberg, Laurel Murchison, and Bravian Roy are the next 3 picks from there for me. So I've got them attacking. They don't attack the pass rush in my potential mock draft as much as we maybe think. But again, we do go after a couple of defensive tackles, not necessarily the edge rushers. Brendan says I would draft Clowney as a nickel. Maybe. Isn't he like 6'2", though, Brendan? It's tough for those corners to be up around that height. Maybe I'm wrong on. No, he's only 6 foot. I remember that. It maybe could work. It could work. He's got the feet to do it. No worries, Team 12. Always glad to have you whenever you can arrive. Yeah, boom shakalaka. You hit on a guy that I just don't get. Marlon Davison. From a lot of people are mocking this guy to us, and I don't see it. Grab my trusty little draft chart with this again. This is a guy I just don't see it on tape. So he's got really good size, really good bend. That's what I think attracts people to a lot of thinking that he'd be a good fit in Seattle. The thing that drives me crazy about this is a lot like the Terrell Lewis, but with a much bigger body. This guy looks to me like a 3-4 outside linebacker. He has, if I was to draw a comparison with him, I'd say he looks a lot like Shaquille Barrett. Maybe not as good as Shaquille Barrett is, but he looks a lot like him as pass rusher goes. The one thing that stands out with him that's a worry, of course, with him, though, is he only played 51% of the run snaps. So with a guy like Davidson, they took him off the field whenever they were trying to run the ball. This is really odd because he's a big-bodied, strong guy. Why was he taken off the field all the time when they were trying to run the ball? And if they did that, then I have to look at him now as just a situational edge rusher, which means that I need to see him win a lot more as a pass rusher than I did. He's just kind of a guy out there at times. Theoretically, you could kick him inside on passing downs because he has the size to do it, but then he doesn't show up with the strength that you'd like to see. He doesn't play to his strength. So I'm not as sold on Davison myself. He's got a good swim move. Again, very good bend for his size. He gets low to the ground for as big as he is. But for a guy you're going to be picking in the second round, I need a little more pop on the film to go there. If they use Rashad Penny properly, do I think Penny will be a good running back? Yeah, I've always maintained that I'm very high on Penny. Think about this, folks. They've misused Rashad Penny throughout his career up until this point, and he's averaging on 5 yards a carry. Think of what he could average if they just utilized him the correct way. And that's why, by the way, that there's teams like the Detroit Lions who've tried to trade for him twice, and who now you're rumored to hear the New York Jets trying to trade for him. That's why you're hearing about this. It's because the guy has talent and the rest of the league knows it. But you've got to use him correctly. If Justin Jefferson is there at 27, do we take him? I don't think so. I think Justin Jefferson has more of a future probably more of a slot receiver at the next level. He'll be a great slot receiver. He'll be a fine pro. But I don't know if he's going to be as good on the outside at the next level. And I don't think Seattle's going to go to pick a slot receiver at 27. Stanton had a lot of trades. I did see his mock on that one. So look, I mean, Brian Edwards is a guy that I had my first mock draft. I had us taken in the late second round. I like his film a lot. Devon Hamilton seems to be the consensus is he's the best 1-tech 4-3 defensive tackle in this draft. His tape didn't blow me away. But again, if he stops the run as well as he did in the college game, you're not asking him to rush the passer. It kind of is what it is there. The Baez, I can't pronounce that guy's name, but the Wisconsin center kid, that was the part that I saw his mock. That one had my eyebrows raised because I can't see him falling that far, even with some of the injury concerns that have been put out there about the kid. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, part of the reason he was able to operate just between the guards and just in that space do so well was because his center was road grading everybody in front of him. Hard to see somebody passing up on him, like a Cowboys team in the second or third round, especially after Frederick's recent retirement. I think they would jump all over that. Ethan Williams, I'm liking Jordan Elliott better than Blacklock or Justin Matabuke from Texas A&M. Well, I like Elliott better than Blacklock. I don't like Blacklock pretty much at all. He can only win with power. He doesn't have any technique. Didn't get a lot of production in his time there. He's really a guy that got people look at his body and his size and length, and they go, "Ooh, this is interesting." It's DeMarcus Lawrence 2.0. Nah, he's just not that on film. Jordan Elliott is a guy that's a pro football focused darling. They had him rated as the top 3-tech defensive tackle in all college football last year. I wasn't wowed by his tape, but the production is there to that degree. And he was a guy that does seem to be one of the more upper level 3-techs in this draft. You can't argue that. I don't know if I like him better than Matabuke. I thought Matabuke played with a little bit more strength, whereas Elliott is so much all finesse. But it's pick your flavor on that one. Thanks, Randall. I appreciate it. Randall, I don't have a super huge history outside of minor, a little here, a little there in high school with the football there. But I'm not a scout or do anything like that. I'm an engineer by trade, so I like to look at how things work and then pull them apart and break them down and I'd be one of those type of people. So when I look at football and I watch it from the way I look at it, I try to view it through the lens of understanding it rather than just looking at it through the enjoyment part of it, just the way my brain works on things. So, 30 plus years of watching football of all types and being pretty dedicated at it. And I just kind of go off what I see. I appreciate you. We take all members, late to the party or not. So I appreciate you hopping in. The draft. What time is the draft? Somebody in chat's gonna have to help you with that one, Shervin. I got I think it's like 7 or something. They always go late at night. So I have to see. I got it right here. Oh, yeah, 4 p.m. Yeah, 4. Wow. They're starting a little earlier than I thought. My preference, assuming they're starting at 27, Chason, Unch, Epineza, Aquara, Matos, Greenwood in that order. Juno, I don't have any problem with your list. I mean, all those guys are, if we're coming away with one of those guys, we're probably coming away with a pretty good pass rushing prospect at the end of the day. And they all are, frankly, very close together when you're, they've got there's different potential points, there's different floor points, but when you're really kind of putting them all together through a meat grinder, that they do kind of all kind of come out very similarly in their rating. Did you talk about Pete Carroll trading all picks? Caden, have you heard something I haven't heard? Is Pete Carroll looking at potentially trading all our picks? I think they'll trade back, but I don't think they'll trade all our picks. How do you feel about drafting a nickel? What if, am I behind? Did I just get behind here? How do you feel about drafting a nickel? What if a draft pick and Amadi both developing into good players? It seems weird to have 2 young guys. Well, I think you need to have depth. Even when we had great corner play at one time, when you had a guy like Walter Thurman out there playing corner for you in 2013, you still had times where he went down to injury and Jeremy Laney needed to come in. And, there was times when Brandon Browner went out to a groin injury and you needed to have Byron Maxwell come in and give you vital snaps over a 2-year period. So you need depth at corner. Ugo Amadi is not a certain thing for you over at slot cornerback. He's a young guy. He had a couple flashes last year, but frankly, we didn't get a lot of tape. It's not his fault. Coaching staff just didn't play him very much. But with that said, he's not a certain thing. And I would feel okay about drafting a slot corner because it would mean that we're going to go out of this stupid damn base defense that we stayed in far too often last year. So I would be highly in favor of it. And the guy that I had them slotted out, of course, in my mock draft to pick is Damon Arnett of Ohio State, who, though he played on the outside at Ohio State, I see him kicking inside at the next level. And I see him being one of, as he develops, a top 3 slot corner in this league. And I think if you get back to playing 60 to 70% of your slots, 60% of your snaps out of the slot, there's a value in that. Did Bud Dupree re-sign with the Steelers or another team? Haven't heard much about him recently. I thought Bud Dupree was a franchise. But again, he's a 3-4 defensive tackle or 3-4 outside linebacker. He's not going to be a fit as a 4-3 guy. The GOAT, I'd love to see the Seahawks draft some diamond in the roughs as well. It's been a while since we've gotten some real, Will Disley does fit in that mold, but a little injury prone. Carson's fit in that mold, but a little injury prone. Be nice to just get one that can stay up on the field. Yeah, I like Peoples-Jones. I saw his tape too, Randall. I like him. I like him because I think you can get him too you could get him as one of those 2 late fourth round picks. You wouldn't need to put a second rounder on him, I don't think. Which you probably would need to do for T. Higgins. I didn't fall in as much love with Higgins' tape. He certainly is a guy that can go up and get it. He doesn't need separation in order to catch the pass, which works well with Russell Wilson. But at the end of the day, I don't know if he's dynamic enough for me as an athlete out there. You're probably right, Boom Shakalaka. If those guys had provided any kind of decent production, it's a different team. James Glenn, I completely think LJ Collier was a panic pick from last year. I did a live stream of the first round last year, and I was so angry. If you guys go back and watch, I'm pissed off at that. I'm so mad at the pick. It just annoyed the hell out of me at every level because it was obviously a reach. When you have that many defensive linemen and that many pass rushers taken in the first round, and then it's your turn to come up and pick, and then you still go and pick one, that's not value at that point. There were other positions of value that had been pushed down to you, and you overlooked them because you were so desperate because of the way you had built your roster for a pass rusher. Bleed Blue and Green, welcome on in the chat, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. The GOAT, I'd love to see them use Shaquem Griffin like that. It's been weird to the degree with him that I didn't expect him ever to be a starter, but I thought they would find they've taken a while to find him a role or to see if there's a way they could utilize that 4.38 speed that he had at the combine. There'd be some way you'd think they would try to find to put him in there, but they've really kind of kept him off the field except for just certain pass rushing situations. But it's the way the NFL is going to go, where you're going to need to have somebody, be it a lineman, a spy, somebody who can chase after these quarterbacks that run 4.3. These guys are just right now at times kind of running around circles around these slower defenders. And this is where guys like Isaiah Simmons from Clemson come into play, who I feel like if the game's going to transition in a direction or change in a direction, then maybe perhaps it changes in that way where those defenders become more valued than they have in the past. OG Bobby Johnson, you watching the Seahawks versus Pats? I just saw that. No, I'm not currently, but I will. I'll see if I can catch it on maybe a replay. Blue and Green, you think Greg Olsen actually has a good season in Seattle? Greg Olsen has a good season in Seattle from a talent-wise and production standpoint as long as he can stay healthy. But that is a big what if at this point, and one that I don't think anybody can answer with any kind of certainty. He's had foot injuries in the past. He's going to be 35 years old next year. To think he's going to, if you're relying on him to be a number one tight end at any point in time in the season for past a game or two, I think that's going to be too much. Hopefully Disley can stay healthy is all I got to say on that one. Because our tight end position is brittle right now. It's very brittle. What's up, DJ? If the Rams have a better season than us next year, do you think Pete will get the boot? Hard to say. With Paul Allen's passing and with Pete Carroll having hired Schneider, so there's no way Schneider's firing him. Carroll's kind of in a role of being probably pretty comfortable in a situation. And I would doubt that there's much of any kind of warm to hot seat underneath him at all. Frankly, he's probably feels like he has carte blanche to kind of do what he wants to do. So I don't think that he gets to decide. I think when he goes, I think Paul Allen's sister, by everything that we've heard, is very protective of Allen's legacy and of the Seattle Seahawks organization. And these things would just kind of point to probably her letting Pete go out on his own terms. It would probably take a couple of years of being bad to really get into that area of things. Randall, I missed your running back rank. You'll have to repost. Oh, there you reposted it. Team 12, you set up the pool this weekend? You guys in a warm area? It's still kind of cold here. I couldn't be out in the pool quite yet. My running back rankings: Taylor, Dobbins, Akers, Swift, Moss. Thoughts? I think I'm probably okay with that. I'm okay with that. I might flip Randall. I would probably flip, and it's just personal preference for me. I would flip probably Dobbins and Akers. But like many, I'm not as high on Swift as many are. And I went back and watched Zach Moss again last night. And again, I don't understand where everybody's love affair comes with that guy. Watch his highlight tape. You'll get blown away. Go watch his film. Go watch him play in and play out. And maybe I watched in tough film. They were playing, I think, Texas, and they got the doors beat off them by Texas. But go watch Zach Moss's Texas film. And tell me where there's a guy that you're going to pick anywhere in the top 3 rounds there. James Glenn, Taylor has a lot of fumbles. He does. That is the one detraction with really, other than the fact it's the big 2 detractions with Taylor are he's had a high workload. So a lot of people are thinking maybe he doesn't have as much tread on his tires. And yes, he has probably a big a fumble issue as any of the running back prospects in this current draft. Team 12's our ceiling next year is 13-3. I think our floor is probably 9-7. I think I split the difference and say our likely record is 11-5. That's what I'm predicting at this point. We did re-sign David Moore. We can also release him at any time. I believe the contract is not guaranteed. The GOAT. What do you think about Lucas Niang? I think he's gotten forgotten, the GOAT. I really do. And this draft is the best draft I've seen for tackles. I keep wanting to go further and further back. It's like 10 years. No, 20 years. And not necessarily in the how great they all are, just in how just all of them are so solid. There's a lot of these guys that just don't have a lot of weaknesses to their games, and the pluses and the boxes they tick off. They tick off so many boxes, and Niang's the same way. good feet, plays with great functional strength, excellent anchor and pass protection, doesn't get overrun. He can mirror very well. You're not going to get around him with a good bend necessarily. He handles counter moves really well. He never gets his feet are always set really well underneath him. A TCU team in general, I mean, you see it with a guy even like Gladney, like everyone there's very well coached from a fundamental standpoint. And Niang's a guy who's just going to slide it a little bit because of so much of the upper level talent that is there on their draft board. But it's funny you said that, and I guess this lends well the GOAT as you ask that, because here's my mock draft, and this is my mock draft of what I would want Seattle to do. So I gave you guys the mock of what I would forecast Seattle doing, what I see them doing. This is what I actually hope them to do. So much like before, I do have them trading back into the second round. I would like to see them do that because I think you can pick up the third round and you're not losing a lot of talent by doing so. I have them taking Yetur Gross-Matos in the early second round. Then I do have them taking Lucas Niang, the GOAT, in the second round with the second round pick. Then with the third second round pick, I have Jalen Reagor, just because I love Jalen Reagor and he's one of my favorite receivers in this draft, and it's my mock, so I get to pick him. Then I have them with 2 third round picks. So with one of the third round picks, I have them taking John Unch. And with the other third round pick, I have them taking Matabuke out of Texas A&M. Then with the fourth round pick, I have them trading the fourth rounder to the Jacksonville Jaguars for Leonard Fournette, because I think it will be a fourth round value for him. And then I have them taking Murchison, the 3-tech, with the other fourth round pick. Essentially Murchison or Benito Jones, one of those two guys. So that's my mock if I was general manager running things. And I am definitely a little bit behind on my deals here, so bear with me, please. I won 20-35 and picked Brady 6 times. That's awesome. He's very mad, Shaquem. I bet he's very mad. Brendan Eichrick says, couldn't you teach D-line hand technique? Yeah, you can, but you have to have the coaches to do it. And Seattle's not had the defensive line technician since Quinn left. That was Quinn's big claim to fame as a defensive line coach originally, is that he was one of the best at developing the hands of the defenders. But not all coaches are built the same way. Not all coaches gravitate towards teaching the same type of things as much as you would think. And we can make an argument back and forth as to whether or not Seattle's seen great development from their pass rushers over the last few years. But it does tend to be a little bit of something you got to have a little bit naturally. If you don't have any type of technique with your hands, if you're just very reliant as a one-trick pony, it's going to be hard for you to just get coached up on that and suddenly translate that over. You've got to have some of that to your game coming off the bus. Since the draft will be virtual, do you think NFL teams will have a little more time to pick a player? I would have guessed it's a potential. But again, the draft's already so damn long. I mean, they already take a long time in between picks. It's hard for me to see them letting it. But hey, look, there's money to be made right now too. Everybody's going to be watching this draft because there's nothing else to watch. Hawks Nest has a 3-decade obsessive compulsive football disorder. Yes, Robert Pennington there. That's my brother for you guys, by the way. I do have a compulsive football disorder. I'll own it. CFD. Who do you want to see Seattle go after in the second round? I think the main guy, if I was to target a guy in the second round, I just would like to see them generally go after, because he's a guy that I think just would fit with the value of where I'd want to see him take a receiver. It's not overdrafting or overpicking. He's a guy that's not getting as much hype because he ran a little slower in the combine, but he's a guy you have to turn the tape on. He didn't have great quarterback play, awful quarterback play, frankly, and that's Jalen Reagor. He's a guy that I keep coming back towards again and again. And I keep thinking, I think he just would fit here. He would just fit. Very Seahawk-y type receiver. Team 12 says, what if Dunbar gets infected and Trey Flowers breaks out? It's a possibility. Dunbar's been injured quite a bit in his career. He's certainly been a little bit injury prone, and those receiver converts to the cornerback position, they don't like getting his physical. It hurts. It hurts to hit. So there's a chance we see Flowers back on the field this year if history holds true. Dunbar is going to be playing for a contract this year, though. And, those guys it's surprising how those guys in contract years tend to play out a full 16-game schedule, almost like they're trying to earn something. Go Pack Go. What's up, Atheist? Good to have you back in, man. Thoughts on trading for Carlos Dunlap from Cincinnati? He wouldn't cost a first rounder like Ngakoue. No, Carlos would probably be more in the, you might even be able to get him for a fourth rounder, frankly. He's getting a little bit long in the tooth. Again, is there a huge difference between, I just lost my spot here. Is there a huge difference between him and Everson Griffin? That's the thing I think I would offer as far as the difference to Carlos Dunlap, because I think that they're very similar players, and you could just sign him. You could just sign Griffin for basically the same price without having to give out draft capital. So I would think I would rather probably go in that direction. We would have been better trading that pick Nathaniel last season. This is one of the reasons that I've been one of the people, as crazy as it is for some of you to hear it. This is why I would love to see Seattle potentially try to trade up and get a guy like Chase Young and package together a bunch of first round picks, because we want to value these first round picks like they're gold year in and year out. But over the last 5 years, what have our first round picks done for us? Really? I don't think that I just don't think they would consider trading up in the first round, because they've never traded up in the first round in the whole 10 years of Schneider and Carroll's regime here. They only trade back. They will trade up, but they trade up into the second round. They'll trade back and up into the third round. They'll target a guy in those areas. They just think it's a little too expensive to trade up in the first round. They don't like doing it. Yeah, it ain't going to happen. Atheist, do I think Zach Bond could play a Bruce Irvin role? Potentially. I think Bond's got some short arms on him. He's got some short 32-inch arms, which Seattle will tend to be leery of on their edge rushers. He has a lot of versatility, though. You can play him anywhere. You could play probably middle linebacker, outside linebacker, Sam, Will. You could have him play anything, and he'd probably be pretty damn comfortable at it. I'd probably want him on the Sam as a Sam linebacker to get him up on the line of scrimmage more often than not. But he would be adept at it. Outside of just having a little bit of problems with being a little shorter armed and not necessarily as explosive as Seattle likes in the pass rush game, he would be a fit. If Seattle Seahawks trade up, what would they get? I could see them trading up to potentially get a left tackle, because there's so many great left tackles in this. If we're talking about trading up to get a guy, it's got to be like an Isaiah Simmons or a Chase Young. Those are really the difference maker types that you'd be looking at. It'd be hard for me to see them trading up for like a Javon Kinlaw, giving up multiple first round picks plus like a third round pick to go get him when he's not the same prospect of those other two guys. Gross Matos going 18 to 20. Yeah, boom shakalaka. I think Gross Matos could go anywhere from 18 to 30 or even into the second round, in my opinion. But it's hard to say at this point. He's right in that odd range where nobody's got a certainty yet. But I've seen him up that high. He could go up that high. Does Rasheem Green break out? The dude ran down Kyler Murray in the open field. That was a really impressive play. I know the one you're talking about, where Murray had him and Murray goes to do like a pump fake and Green doesn't buy it, but then he sort of changes direction on him and Green just flips his hips and is right there with Murray. I don't know if next year's the year for him. He was a really young guy coming out of college and probably could have used another year in college, frankly. With that said, I think he's a guy who's got the Everson Griffin trajectory. That's what I've always mentioned. Both these guys have a very similar size, strength, length. You look at their combine numbers, very similar. They both came out of USC. I think he's going to have a very similar career trajectory where it goes, first year 0 sacks, second year 4 sacks, this year 6 sacks. And then into the year and the year after, he starts to get into that 8 to 11 sack range where he becomes the prime player that he's eventually going to become. Yeah, they get too cute. James Glenn mentioned something that's interesting. If they had kept the 21st pick last year, they could have traded they could have had Montez Sweat. And I think Sweat, I can't tell if it was Burns or Sweat, but I think that one of those two guys, along with Rashawn Gary, I don't think the Seahawks thought any of those three guys, or at least one of those three guys, was going to be available for them. I think it absolutely blew them away when all those guys went off the board, especially after they traded back. I don't think they would have traded back if they knew that he was going to be taken. Will Clowney be off the board before draft day? Clowney will not be off the board before draft day. I'm checking my calendar. Yep. The 26th is when Clowney's going to be off. So the day after the draft is probably when you're going to see Clowney signed, or right in around there, because that's when the compensatory system cuts off, meaning that any teams that sign Clowney now don't have the compensatory system come back into play, meaning that it's going to cost them a third round in compensatory. So, you've got the Giants, for instance, that right now, I think they have a couple free agents they lose this offseason, like Golden. Let's say he gets signed. He hasn't been signed, but somebody signs him. Now they have some draft compensation coming back for that loss of signing, but if they go sign Clowney prior to the 26th of April, they don't get anything for that loss. They wait post the 26th of April. They still get that, and they get the Clowney. So that's, I think, the real reason we haven't seen up until this point Clowney moved. That's the impression that I get. Atheist, man, I'm with you. I was on the Albert Obu watch, and I can't pronounce his name, Atheist, but I was on the train of his right out the gate when I was watching the tight end position. Was the first I kind of looked at. It was prior to us signing Greg Olsen, so I was trying to look at the tight ends in this draft. And man, I was just not liking the tight ends in this draft. It was one after another of just slow, plodding, Frankenstein moving mofos. And then you come to Albert, and he's this big guy who's got some jump, some hop to him, and he blocks well, and he's got sure good hands. And then he goes and runs like a 4.5 at the combine. I went, hell. He's getting taken in this draft in the second round at that point. It's too fleeting at the tight end position. So it's not going to be a possibility for Seattle, but I echo, he might very well be my favorite tight end in this draft at the end of the day. Mel Geiper mocked Ja'Kai Polite last year. Collier sucked last year. Polite not in the league. How's that for positivity? Collier not the biggest one-year bust. No, it's and Collier did have a high ankle sprain at the start of training camp last year, and high ankle sprains tend to linger. And it was his rookie year. And let's face it, Rasheem Green had a crappy first year too. So we'll see if he can maybe pull up his bootstraps and bring himself along here. I remain skeptical of the guy, but we'll see. I'm a Badger fan, and Taylor is better than Melvin Gordon. He can get so skinny, and that is an underrated trait and has that elite top speed. Yeah, Atheist, he has a unique attribute that I don't know the last running back that I've seen who runs like that. I don't. Most of these running backs that come out, they do their work throughout the whole area. It's not just in between guards, and he's got to keep the 4.39 speed. He can go to the edge just the way Wisconsin used him with the inside zone scheme. And he would just go right up the middle, one cut, one move, like you said, could get skinny, makes one move, and bam, he's out in the open in a blink. And you just seen him doing it play after play after play after play. It's impressive to watch. It really is. He's not going to need huge holes opened up for him. He's going to break off huge runs. He's going to be a grinder for you and get you those tough yards and fall forward. There's not a lot not to like about Taylor, and I agree. He's better than Gordon. Gordon was really I always thought he was a bit of an overachiever as a running back. A guy who wasn't really super gifted, but got the maximum bit out of every bit of juice that he had. I don't know how I get behind on these so much. Nathaniel Park says, what about Brandon Ayuk out of ASU? Well, Brandon was marked by Pro Football Focus as the best route runner in all of college football last season. Shows up on tape. The guy can run any route in the game. He can create separation very easily. He's got pretty good hands. Just nothing in his tape jumped out at me necessarily. And he's not a bad guy, not a bad prospect, but when he's in that grouping of guys that are going to get taken in that early second round, it's hard for me to be on board with that. I looked and saw more of the late third round guy, frankly, in just what he was on the football field and his impact. Now, with that said, again, great route runners that can create separation and have a lot of value in the NFL. And so he probably will be picked into that second round range. There's just some guys I just can't quite, I don't get the feel for him for whatever reason. People love him. People are on board with them. And Okawara is one of those guys like that. There's a lot of guys who love Julian Okawara out of Notre Dame. And I'm just very wish-washy on him. I don't hate him, just not blown away by him. I don't see it. TJ Wilborn, Trey Adams in the 4th, and that's a steal in my opinion. If he can stay healthy, he'll be a really good player. I like Trey Adams a lot too, TJ. I think you could potentially get him in the 5th or 6th round in this draft, though. It's so deep for offensive linemen and offensive tackles, and to think that once you get into the 4th and 5th round range, there'll be so many of those teams that have picked tackles by that point because there's so much depth and quality there that they're going to be picking for other positions when they get to the back half of the draft. So a guy like Adams could definitely fall a little bit, and boy, it'd be an intriguing prospect of maybe potentially, if you're not able to get another left tackle early on, if you can get him in the 4th, 5th, 6th as your hedge to Dwayne Brown going into next year, that's better than Cedric Abuja probably. Probably, though. That's not a certainty. If Collier does in year 2 what Green did last year too, would you feel better about the pick? I think 19 is going to end up being strong. DK obvious, Barton and Ugo can play, Blair and Haynes redshirt. Well, Brandel, I do agree with you that I think last year's draft was one of the stronger ones we had in recent years. The difference between Collier and Green is a couple of things. I would say that Green showed you a lot more bend coming out of college and potential than Collier did. Collier won specifically with power and power alone in college. The other aspect of this is that Green was really young, 20 years old coming out, turned 21, I think, in his rookie year. Collier was 24 years old last year. He's going to be 25 next year. He kind of is what he is. It's very important because that physical development, you're going to take that next step of physical development from ages of 22 to 25. Collier's kind of already de facto has done that. And since he's not a technician to go along with that, and it's harder to win at the next level, power is the one thing in defensive linemen and in pass rushers that does not translate to the next level because everybody is strong in the NFL. If you're only winning with power in college, it's a big red flag. Everyone should be going, warning, warning, because you've got to be Ndamukong Suh-like strong for that to really translate over. And Collier was not Ndamukong Suh-like in college. He just wasn't. So I don't think he's going to take that next step as far as it goes. Our best case scenario right now with LJ Collier is that he transitions into being that 5 tech they thought he could be, and he could stop the run on early downs, which we do need in this. We do need. Like, look, don't undersell it. We were one of the worst in the league at stopping the run last year. Teams had 4.9 yards per carry. And for a team on the defensive side of the ball that wants to stop the run first and foremost, that's a problem. Ursula has a chance to contribute to. The problem for Ursula that he's going to run into is the numbers game this year. And the Philip Dorsett signing really hurt him because he's a guy who can only play on the slot. He can't play on the outside. So when you have Lockett already eating up a bunch of snaps at the slot, then you've got Philip Dorsett coming in and eating up a bunch of snaps at the slot. Are there remaining snaps in the slot available for Ursula outside of a injury? Probably not. But I like Ursula. It's just a numbers game. Poona Ford is a return man. Ethan Williams, yeah, I just don't see us going for Carlos Dunlap because Everson Griffith is very similar as a player. The well-rounded players, they'll get you a handful of sacks a year, stop the run well. They both do the same thing. Why are you going to give up draft capital for Carlos Dunlap when you could just pay Everson Griffith on a lower-end deal? Because Griffin's not going to cost you a lot of money. Yeah, I love Chase Young, boom shakalaka. If they trade up for Chase Young, that would reinvigorate this defense completely. Shaquem, I agree with you 150%. You can't mathematically do that, but I'm doing it anyway. I would rather the Seattle Seahawks win a Super Bowl and have no draft capital than be just good. I would go a step further. I would rather us win a Super Bowl and be bad for a couple of years and then go win a Super Bowl and then be bad for a couple of years than just be consistently good and win no Super Bowls. And right now, some of the front office's approach appears at times to be just be consistently good. That's good enough. Now, Atheist, look, I know you're down on Rashawn Gary because he had a little bit of a tough year, but you signed two good pass rushers that pushed him a little bit to the back of the stack last year. He had the offseason shoulder surgery, so he couldn't get as strong as he needed to get prior to the season. Just give Gary some time, man. I think you got some juice there with him. I wouldn't undersell him quite yet there. I like him still. Nathaniel Parks, I don't disagree with you either. I mean, they probably do have to go 5-1 in their division. With the playoff rules changing this season, and you're going to see each conference get one less team that's going to get that first round bye, that's very impactful because that means you've got to be now the clear runaway best team in the entire conference in order for you to be able to get that first round bye and home field throughout the playoffs, which we have seen and we all know and was once again proven out last year, as I told you guys it would be, that the biggest factor for us to get back to the Super Bowl here is to get that home field advantage. It's a necessity. We've seen enough of the team trying to win on the road and to be road warriors in order to get back to the Super Bowl. That's just so hard to do. And it's done so infrequently in football. You don't want to count on it. You don't want to try to make that the way you're going to go about it. I'm kind of not either, Boom Shakalaka. I think there's a part of me that liked having the 2 first-round buys in each conference. There's a part of this that feels a little bit, I don't know. I get it. It makes sense. It probably makes more sense to just have one team in each conference rewarded. So there is some of that, but I don't know. I guess I'm with you. I don't know. No worries, Carl. This is just a prep right now, man. This is the prep stream to the big streams. So this is the little creek trickle into the big river. That's all this is. Hey, great show. What's up, Toast? Lecky Fotu. I like Lecky's film, man. I really like Lecky's film. So he's a guy at One Tech who, I give a lot of crap to Raekwon Davis and a couple of these other guys that are one techs who can't hold up at the point of attack and the double teams will push him back. He doesn't get pushed back by double teams. Lecky holds up. He really does. And that's when I'm looking at a one tech, that's my number one. What do you do out the gate? Other people look for gap control and all that. Hold up against the double team first and foremost, because you're going to be doing it a lot. He does that in spades. So Lecky, really good. And then as well, I was surprised to see he was actually able to give a little bit of pass rush there from the one tech, which the one tech guys in this draft, there's not a lot of pass rush there from them in what they're giving you. They're giving you run stepping and run stepping only. To get Lecky in the 5th round, I'm feeling good at. I don't really want to be picking him in the 4th, but I have a feeling that his value is going to probably go into the 4th round. But as a guy who could come in at the one tech, he'd give you very similar production probably to what you got out of Al Woods last year. Very similar to what you got out of Al Woods. So I like Fotu's really, really good. There's a lot of prospects on that Utah defense here that are coming in this draft. He might be my favorite one in this current draft. Yep, got the fumble problem. The fumble problem is something that there's been players in the past who've had fumble issues who've been able to solve the fumble issue. It's not always one of those things where if you've got it, you're always going to have it. A guy like Tiki Barber almost had his early career completely derailed by fumbles. Completely could not hold on to the ball. They taught him the high and tight approach in holding the ball. And if you go back and watch Tiki Barber's old tape now, you'll notice and watch him always running like this with the football because he was so worried about fumbling, but he was able to solve his fumbling issues after that. So you can teach it from a technique standpoint. It is a thing that doesn't necessarily follow a guy for the whole part of their career, though. Chris Carson is surely putting that to the test, isn't he? Brendan Eichrick, why did you hate Byron Murphy so much? It's with Byron, it was more about, for me, a lot of times it's about value. And so when you're talking about taking a guy in the late 1st round or the early 2nd round, I just need a little bit more upside. And to me, like when let me give you a reference. So Byron Murphy, a really good cornerback that they want to bring in as a de facto great slot cornerback. If I measure up Byron Murphy up against Damon Arnett is a vastly superior player. Yet I'm talking about in my mock drafts, taking Arnett at the back end of the 2nd round, whereas we saw Murphy taken at the top of the 2nd round last year. So when it comes to where my issue lies is I don't hate the player. I hate the thought of picking him in that place that's way too high. To me, Murphy was a 3rd round guy. And not a guy that when I watched his tape gave me a lot that this guy's giving me upper level slot play. Is he? Is he, what does he do great? Again, that's what I'm looking for in that first round to early second is your upside. I'm not looking for high floor. I'm looking for upside. I get the teams will draft to floor, but you got to show me what you got on the upper end of things. I'll go for floor later. Carl, you were the first to let me know about Lecky. I went back and watched his tape the other night. I really liked it. Atheist, do you prefer Austin Jackson or Josh Jones? My goodness, they're close prospects, Atheist. You really picked two guys that are just like right near each other. I'm going to go with Josh Jones because I think that there's the attraction to Austin Jackson is his athletic elements, which are great. But I don't think I see as much nastiness to Jackson's game. And watching Epinesa kind of work Austin Jackson in the game that I watched and the way that he set him up throughout the game, I think other defensive ends are going to do that to Jackson. And I think he's one of the actual tackles that are going to be overdrafted in this upcoming draft. Should we pick up a kicker that wears glasses? I think he goes to Georgia. No, you've signed Blair Walsh to a multi-year deal. If you cut him, you're going to be eating dead money, albeit a little bit of dead money, but what's the point in eating dead money? Play it out, lay it out, let it go. What we need to do is go for it on fourth down more. We don't need a better kicker. Atheist, I agree with you. I think the thing to remember too with his fumbles is that because he runs so much of the inside zone game, and some of this is part of why Carson, this is very similar to why Carson has these same issues with fumbling. When you take the ball as a running back and you're going up the middle, it's the quickest way to go get some yards. What's the quickest way? It's a straight line, right? But the other part of it is that you have multiple defenders on either side of you blindsiding you. And a lot of times you're coming down to go into the lane and some guy's hitting you from this side and the ball gets fumbled. So Carson, you saw that on in like the Pittsburgh Steelers game where Watt came down on him and did that. And then the Arizona Cardinal game, Rashad Penny had that happen to him where he's going up in the middle and the guy's crashing down because he's unblocked and he just swats down on the arm and the running back never sees it. There is some of that to that. I feel like if more outside runners have a little bit more of a chance to get the ball to their outside arm and they got the sideline to their benefit. So if it gets knocked out, it might have a chance of rolling out of bounds. They get the benefit of that a little bit more. But I don't hit him as much for that. He's so fast. He's so strong as a runner and he runs with so much physicality that I will overlook it in his case. He's like a faster Chris Carson, a much faster Chris Carson. A BDF, what's up, man? Am I the only one that annoyed the price for 4 linemen they signed? They could have signed Conklin. I'm annoyed at the signings of EDIM. I think it was a lot of, especially with the fact that they've kept Britt. We didn't see his cut. So currently right now you have $15 million allotted to the center position as it currently stands right now. I didn't love that at all. I don't think Jack Conklin was in play. Jack Conklin is a Midwestern boy. He went to Michigan State, I believe. He's played in Tennessee. He signed with the Browns. Based on what I heard, he didn't really want to come out far west or anything like that. I don't know that he was even in play. There wasn't a lot of other offensive linemen out there. It seems like Seattle made the best of what they could have with it, but I would have preferred you take the resources allocated to a pass rusher at that point, that $13 million, and then come into the draft and fix your offensive line problems in the draft. Because this is the draft. This is the draft to do it in. That's where the position strength of this draft is. It's odd to spend money when you've got it in the draft here and you can just put the money in other places, especially because the pass rushers aren't as good in this draft. Who are some guys you feel like Seattle would pick that you would hate? Wow, what a great question. Let me think about that, Brendan. God, who would I hate? That's fascinating. I think I would be angry about just about any linebacker early on. If we picked any, I don't care who the linebacker is. If you picked a linebacker early on, I would be pissed. I would be really angry about that. I think I would be mad with Zach Moss in the second or third round. I think that would make me mad. I've watched a lot of film on this guy now, and I keep coming back away from feeling like he is vastly overrated as a running back. So he would probably be another one of those guys that I would fit into that column of things. I'll try to think about some more. John Staff asked, does Will Disley come back strong or is he trade capital? John, there's really no draft capital there in trading for him for any other team because of his injury problems, despite his talent. So he does come back. Chicano Azteca, not a big fan of the Seahawks, I'm seeing, my friend. Well, we still appreciate you joining the chat nonetheless. Ethan Williams, I could understand that Ethan Williams says a report I saw said Seattle only sees 17 guys as first round grade in this draft. And I can understand where they're coming from on that. It makes a lot of sense, frankly. That seems about right. It's again kind of echoes a little bit what I was saying early on in the stream, which is that the more I kind of watch this draft, a little bit of the lower I am on them. There's guys that will be pros, that'll be starters, but are there upper level difference makers in this draft? Not a lot necessarily. So I can get where they're coming from by saying there's 17 that they value in that direction. And this is, again, going to lend into the fact that that's also Schneider sort of prepping the fan base for the trade back approach as well. Because they'll come back and say to us, we really see from 18 to 49, it's really about the same value for us as the player. And that's exactly what they'll tell us. They've told it to us in the past in that respect. And they're not wrong. It's not a PR campaign. They're not BSing you at that point. It really is. That's the way the talent falls in this particular draft. Last year's draft, for instance, I don't think was the same way. I think the top 40, you could go in even to the top 30, 32, top 33 picks. There was some true first round talents in there. Part of what pissed me off about the LJ Collier pick, because he wasn't one of them. Do you think they signed for a line because of Russ? I don't know if we wouldn't do it if Russ didn't say something. No, I think that they did it because they were caught in a situation where they didn't want to get stuck having to draft offensive linemen in the draft. And there wasn't a lot of other options available out there in free agency. You know, you look at a guy like Brandon Scherf, we thought maybe he's going to be available. Now he gets franchised. You know, there really wasn't a lot else out there. There just isn't. Jack Conklin got scooped up and that took another guy off. And, you know, if you were looking to truly upgrade the position, it was just, there was a dearth of talent out there this offseason as far as offensive line. And there is in the NFL in general right now. Everyone is trying to scramble, I think, to try to put a decent unit together. There's only so many of those teams out there that have been like the Cowboys and the Titans and the Chiefs, who from end to end have created a very good offensive line. What Seahawks should get QB in draft or pick up Smith for backup quarterback spot? I think that they'll probably go back to Geno Smith, especially with the new rule that's been implemented, and this has had an effect on the Philip Dorsett signing, the Micah Iupati signing. In the past, when you used to sign vets to the minimum deal, if they were at a certain year, like year 6 or 7 in their career, they were eligible to be paid $1.5, $1.6 million on a 1-year deal. That was the base minimum for those veterans. And this caused a lot of veterans to get forced out of the league prematurely. Because if I can go get a rookie on a $400,000 or $500,000 deal, and even if you're a much better player, I got to pay 3 times the amount for you. That's really not worth it for me. Well, what we're going to see with this Mike Iupati deal and the Dorsett deal, and potentially even Geno Smith coming back, is now you can structure him into that $1 million territory where it's a 1-year, $1 million deal. And that makes it a little bit more palatable to be able to swallow that. And it just frees up that much more, a little bit of money for you along the cap. Backup quarterbacks usually used to be where you have to pay a couple million for a backup quarterback. We need to go cheap there though. Remember the time. Who do you consider your sleeper player in the draft that the Seahawks should pay attention to? My sleeper guy is, I was just thinking of him and I just lost him out of my thought process here. I've got a sleeper guy for you. Let me think about it. I got to come back to it, but I do have a sleeper for you. I was going to say Caden, by the way. Jalen Hurts would be a guy that Seattle looked at quarterback, but I can't see them going that. Oh, I've got your sleeper. Remember the time. Antonio Gibson is my sleeper. I remember the time. He's a guy that ran the 4.39, I think it was pro day. He's a guy that played a lot of wide receiver there and at the college team played for, but he's a guy that when he was a running back, I think he averaged 14 yards per carry. Just a big guy that can move. A guy you could maybe get in the 5th, 6th round who's got a lot of potential. He's all potential, Antonio Gibson. But he'd be a guy that I would definitely say is on my radar as kind of a sleeper. Boom Shakalaka says, if Tua dropped, would you pick him up for a future trading chip? Yeah. If you pick him up in the 1st round, that's 3 first-round picks waiting to happen within even a year from now, potentially. So he won't drop that far, but if he were, yeah, that's value. You've got to pluck that up at that point. You absolutely have to. B57, what is up? Love the video from the Patriots victory. Keep them streams. I always do. Thank you, man. I appreciate you dropping in, man. I appreciate you watching too. All of you guys, I appreciate you watching so much. We're doing so good as far as growth on the channel. Just absolutely amazing. Are you concerned about the O-line evaluation considering they've only drafted 1 Pro Bowler in 10 years, while the vast majority didn't even receive a second contract in Seattle? I think part of the issue, AD, and welcome to chat, AD. Part of the issue here is, thanks B7. I don't know if I said that, by the way. I think part of the issue is that offensive line in general has become almost impossible, not impossible, but it's become really, really hard to evaluate for all NFL teams. The issue that we've had with our offensive line is not just a problem here. It's an issue league-wide. This is why Bill O'Brien gave up multiple 1st-round picks for a guy like Laramie Tunsil, who's not even considered by many even a top 5 left tackle in this league. It's just that it's become so driven by there's just a lack of options out there. And this comes out of the spread offenses of college, and there just not being a lot of college teams running pro-style offenses where a quarterback's going under center and he's turning around and handing the ball off or running off of play action. And so you've got a lot of offensive linemen that can maybe pass protect okay or decent, but they can't run block, or, they can pass protect for 2.5 seconds that the play is being executed in on the college game. But now you're asking them to pass protect for 3.5, 4 seconds and they're exposed. I think that there's a better argument to be made that rather than trying to draft these guys, which is a crapshoot, that you do try to go out there and find the certain thing. My argument that I made at the start of the offseason was that you're going to have to pay up the goods to get that guy. You're going to need to give up something to pull that guy in. So, I mentioned the kid from the Colts, and his name's slipping my mind at the moment, Quinn Nelson. And I proposed, hey, would you guys be willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Quinn Nelson? Like, that's what you've got to go do when you go find a guy like that that's out there. You've got to blow the team away with what you're offering in draft capital. And, when you look at the Colts, for instance, they gave up a first-round pick to bring in DeForest Buckner. Would they be open to now, recouping some of that lost draft capital in order to do that? We don't know. And I don't think Seattle would be willing to make that kind of deal. But it's what is necessitated at this point, considering how hard it is to bring the offensive lineman in and considering that, you're going to get Russell killed if you don't. You're going to get him battered. And you're not going to run the ball well, which we're going to see more of if we don't get better at that. Seattle trading up as a super sleeper. None sees it coming. I hope you're right, Robert. I hope you're right. We would be so stoked if we saw them trade up. I think the whole fan base would get out of their chair. Everybody would. The thing to remember, though, too, AD, even though they didn't get the second contract in Seattle, there is a lot of offensive linemen that they drafted that are still out there playing in the league. Okung is still playing in the league. James Carpenter is still playing in the league. Ifedi did get a contract. George Fant did just get, paid on a decent deal as I think about this more. I think that it's a kind of a shell game a little bit with the offensive line right now, unfortunately. Jalen Hurts in the second round for insurance, because if we go into the season with backup linemen starting Wilson, you get hurt, and I hope that don't happen. Yeah, you're not wrong, the GOAT. There's a really good chance Wilson could eventually here get hurt, as we've seen the offensive line leave him exposed recently in the past a decent amount. It'd be hard for me to go out and grab Jalen Hurts in the second. It really would. He's probably going to be picked in the 3rd round or late second. That is right around where he's going to be picked. But boy, I would really want to go in a different direction of that. There's a part of me that just feels like if Russell goes down, then that's bye-bye to that season. That just is what it is. And you have to adjust accordingly after that point. I don't think that we can pick to have a backup quarterback in and we'll go if Russell goes down, then we can put this guy in and still get to the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. Russell Wilson was worth more wins last year than any other quarterback in the NFL. He was the most valuable player by Pro Football Focus. So when you lose him, you don't have the valuable team around him to overcome that loss at that point. TJ Wilborn, Pete loves excuses. We lose in the playoffs. He blamed it on injuries. So do you think he could say we didn't splash in free agency because of the coronavirus? I've got to think that at one point or another, we're going to hear the excuse given that this offseason and the way it went was driven to some large degree by the coronavirus. And let's face it, that if this season coming up next, if you see the schedule get cut down, if we go to an 8-game season, let's say, that's not going to benefit the Seattle Seahawks. We tend to be a slow starting team that comes together to our best potential by the end of the year. We take all of those games to kind of build it up, and it's sort of a system in place that Carroll has developed over years to get to that point. We didn't see necessarily the boom of that last year because of the injury situation, but they were on track for it. If you had Clowney healthy, if you had a couple of your linemen at full health, if you had a running back or two that were all right, that would have made the difference. Your team was in good enough shape around them to make it go there. But he's going to have the injury excuse built in again for this season. Right now, Mike Iupati is going to be slated to be left guard. Huge injury history. Right now, your left tackle is Dwayne Brown. Huge injury history. DJ Fluker, pretty meaty injury history. 3/5 of your offensive line right there. Pretty meaty, And then let's look at our center, Britt, slated to come back, slated to be a starter. Huge injury history. Greg Olson, injury history. Will Disley, injury history. Those excuses are already pre-built in now for next year. It just is. They're going to be able to lean back on that. I'm not going to accept it. You're going to hear me on this channel at that point going ape shit because I've now had to watch year after year after year, you giving me the same excuse, and essentially telling me, no, it's something new this time. No, it's something new. No, it's something you could have seen coming. You can see an injury coming. You can see an injury problem coming if you fill your roster out with a bunch of old guys that are injury prone. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that that's going to happen. Shaquem, thank you, man. I got this from my mom. She's a good mom. Chase Stern asks, I saw a report that Seattle likes Josh Unch. Do you like him? This is the kid out of Michigan. I do like him. I think he's not aligned to one place. I think you could move him all over the place. You could put him at Sam linebacker. You could probably have him rush in from the will. You could put him as a down lineman. There's a lot of different ways that you could kind of utilize him. And I think that I just have a general feeling about him. And this is a kind of a bit of a projection because with some of these guys, you can see the technique and then know that you'll get production out the gate. With this guy, it's a little bit like Bruce Irvin, where it's that I can just see he has an ability to find his way to the quarterback one way or another. And I think that that's going to translate with his quickness and first step get off at the next level. I think it will. And again, probably in the late second round is where you're going to look at him picked, if not into the third. Caden Cooper, do you like Jeremy Chin? Because they're saying that he's a pro comparisons Cam Chancellor. He's nowhere. He cannot carry Cam Chancellor's jock strap. First off, Jeremy Chin, plays for South Dakota State. So again, you get the level of competition thing, which is initially a red flag to me. Then when I watch him, he's a guy who's got all the size, speed. When he moves in the direction, it's a wow factor, but he doesn't have any instincts at the position. He has to wait for the play to go, and then he's going to go make the play. And rather than really knowing where he's going to go or have an idea of where he's going to go, you can see him taking that extra second to kind of transition through on things. I don't see a guy who's, as a box safety, is going to give you any kind of ability to cover in space. He will be a complete liability in the coverage game. So if George Kittle gets matched out with this guy on the edge, Kittle's going to eat his lunch every single time. This guy is really the quintessential guy who goes into a combine, blows up a combine, and then everybody tries to squint their eyes when looking back at the tape from the previous season or the previous seasons and going, oh yeah, he's like Cam. He's Cam. Watch Cam Chancellor's tape at Virginia Tech. He was blowing guys up all over the field. The instincts, the ability to be physical, you saw it there. I can't believe, frankly, Cam dropped to where he dropped. I think it was just because teams just could not wrap their head around having a 6'4" safety back there. That was just, at that time, it was too mind blowing of a crazy thought that just kept them from drafting him up until the 5th round. But his tape, he is drilling guys. I mean, just drilling them. And I didn't see that with Jeremy Chin. He's just kind of, he does the whole thing where I think he like wraps his fingers up with the tape to look more badass. And it's not happening. No, Kitty's on the floor right now. She's liking the floor. John Staff says they keep saying Russ is slowing down, but I think his top gear is still incredible. I think Russ is still excellent at evading pressure, and he understands how to evade pressure, and that goes beyond sometimes quickness and speed. It's a feeling. It's a way of moving in the right direction at the right moment, and I think he's going to still have that as he gets older. I don't think that he's necessarily as fast as he once was. When I went back on this great Seahawk moment, Patriot video that I did, there's a play where he scrambles and he sort of comes around the pocket one way and he comes back around the other way. And when he's got to run past Vince Wilfork, who's right next to him, he sort of hits his jets at that moment. And he's right past Vince Wilfork into a pirouette around Gerard Mayo. And I don't know if today's version of Russell Wilson has that same quickness to do that same move that fast. But with that said, I don't think he's slow or that he's lost all of his speed. I just think that he's probably not quite as quick there. I'm scared because we don't have a pass rush. We're screwed. My favorite part of football is the pass rush, and not even the LOB could cover everyone forever. Yeah, it's even if you were to acknowledge the fact or believe that the Seattle Seahawks of the early 2000 teens were built from the back end up front. They paid the back end, but I would argue that they weren't necessarily built from the back end front. They were still built like teams traditionally are on defense, from the defensive line to the linebacker to the secondary. And Seattle, when they had already Bruce Irvin and Chris Clemens able to rush the passer, and still Brandon McBain was here, and you had the Clinton McDonalds, and you had some guys that could still get to the quarterback. They still went out and grabbed Michael Bennett, grabbed Cliff Averill. They really understood that they needed to beef up that pass rush. And part of it is the simplicity of the scheme you play. You play so much zone, and your zone is built to protect against the deep ball so much that's going to leave routes open underneath. And the only way you can kind of protect against that, really, at the end of the day, is generate quick pass rush. Get to the quarterback quick before those routes can develop. And that's where we could be in trouble if they're not able to cobble together enough between the parts and pieces that they've assembled this offseason. Do you know who Norb Cab is? He's a pretty cool guy. Yep, Norb Cab is I think he'd be the top Seahawk YouTube channel guy, I believe. So I like his videos. Seems like a cool guy. TJ Wilborn, if Russ doesn't get hurt in his career, he's definitely going to get CTE if we don't protect him. I think Clay Matthews alone is probably giving Russ CTE. But it's been amazing. It's amazing to really look at and understand how much of a beating Russell has taken over his career. And I think that we sometimes forget about it because you just get used to him being out there every single Sunday, always suiting out, there for every snap, always bouncing up from everybody, every hit. But you see quarterbacks, even in this last year, as the rules have continued to just go up and up and up to try to protect these guys, you still see these quarterbacks taking hits and getting injured on even real benign plays. Look at the Patrick Mahomes quarterback sneak early in the season where he dislocated his kneecap. It's like it wasn't some guy hit his kneecap or his leg weird. It's just a simple play. He's driving forward, his kneecap snaps out. It's that simple and that easy to happen. So when you go to the other side of this and you've got a quarterback who's literally having bullets flying past his head all the time because you aren't putting an offensive line together that can really protect well enough for him, because you've built the offensive line first and foremost to be a run-centric offensive line and not a pass-protecting offensive line. It's amazing that he has continued to stay healthy, but it's also part of the reason why I say we're getting closer and closer to a Russell Wilson season-ending injury than ever before. And the more that they discount the offensive line, the more that they don't pay attention to that as much as they should, the closer and the quicker we are getting to that place. Mosey, what's up, man? Do you think the Hawks should be building up their defense more? I wouldn't necessarily defense more. I would say defensive line. I think that the Seahawks could theoretically go cheap with linebackers and cheap with the secondary, and then build into their defensive line first and foremost, and that would drive the defense towards at least being league average, if not above league average. And then you could utilize the resources into other places, i.e., potentially even build like a juggernaut offense. But I would like more of the resources to go there than anything else. But pass rushers are the key ingredient right now that are missing from this stew. That's the main thing we've got. You got the Dunbar and Griffin as your guys. Flowers gives you some depth. Ugo Madi would be fine as a nickel corner. You've got 3 really good safeties right now. Your linebacking crew is set with KJ Wright still on the roster. Cody Barton there, Ben Burke-Hervin's there. You've got even Bruce Irvin, who can be a Sam linebacker for whenever you need. So everything else is in play. It's the pass rush that's missing. Robert says, my dream is to trade up for Chase Young, sign Clowney, Griffin, and Bennett. Yeah. Woo, you're shooting for the stars on that one, Robert. I think everyone would be pretty happy with that one if they did something like that. I think everyone would be real happy with that. I don't know if they'd have the money to sign all those guys, though. That would take a lot. I don't know if we're going to have a season at this point, y'all. I mean, it's getting really, really scary here as the NBA season's not reopening. Baseball's not reopening. You're going to get into training camps and stuff like OTAs and all that stuff that are going to be missed here. It really is looking more and more like we're going to see probably, a real reduced schedule as a likelihood at this point. I would hope not. I think the whole nation by that point is going to be fiending for any kind of sports that they can get. But this thing just doesn't seem to be going away at the speed that they thought it was going to go away. And it just goes further and further to make me believe that, we're maybe looking at some, a reduction or a wholly cancellation of the season. Atheist, I like Colin Johnson's film all right from Texas. Obviously, Devin Durnay was the guy that jumped a little bit more off the tape for me. So, he's one of those guys on my list this week that I'm going to go through and watch a little bit more tape on, because there's been a lot of people in the chat who are real big proponents of him. Another one of those guys who could potentially probably fall into that second, third level of receivers where you're getting him in maybe the late 3rd round or 4th round and not having to give up as much draft capital, but really getting in still a damn fine player. He's got good size, good hands, runs good routes. I got to watch a little bit more on him to get the feel for things. Zach Handles, what's up, man? Thoughts on Tua getting a 13 on the Wonderlic? The Wonderlic is what it is. I don't give it as much value as other people go. The problem for me with Tua, and I think that the people, somebody smarter than me that said this last week, is that, he thinks he's Russell Wilson, but he's not Russell Wilson. In the respect of he thinks he can get out and escape and get out of defenders' grasp and he just gets hammered. And it happens time and time again. And he has talent, but he's just not a guy to me that, that's where the concerns come. It isn't a Wonderlic score for me. It's, look, he's got health issues, and his health issues surmise and come out of the fact that he can't protect himself very well. Russell Wilson protects himself as well as anyone. What's up, Chris Corcoran? Welcome on into the chat. So that's a little bit of, I think the Wonderlic's not the issue with him. The other thing with Tua is on the arm thing. He's really got to kind of wind up when he's got to put a throw out there. A lot of that offense in Alabama was opening up, and they've gone to a very complicated offense. It's a 180 turn from what they were a few years ago is sort of the old school, we're just going to run it and that's all we're going to do approach to things. They've really become multifaceted in what they do on the offensive side of the ball, and it opens things up for them. You see guys running free and opened up all the time. And when windows tended to get tight on Tua, he got a lot less inaccurate. People are really trying to draw to the Drew Brees comparison with the guy, and I don't know if it's as fitting even absent the injury concerns. It's still going strong. Yeah, we're going strong. I said I was going to do a 2-hour stream today. We're almost getting into 3 hours. So I'm pushing a little bit past where I was going to today. I'm going to have to probably end the stream somewhat here soon, but we'll go on here for a bit. Do you think the Seattle Seahawks should get a lockdown cornerback in the draft? No, I don't at this point. You've given up some draft capital, bringing in Dunbar. You've got Trey Flowers. You've got some depth. You've got other deals that you need to hit. You've got other problems and issues with the defense and offensive line that you need to grab instead. I think right now adding Dunbar was a fine move. 1-year deal, $4 million. He's not going to ask for an extension this year, so we don't have to worry about holdout problems like they would have in Washington. We'll just ride with the horses we got at that point, in my opinion. I do think Arnett would be maybe a possibility because he would give you an upper level slot corner, which you're not going to get anywhere else. But absent from that, I don't think so. TJ, sign Clowney and trade him to the Redskins for pick 2. Yeah. I'm sure Clowney will probably have a no trade clause in whatever contract he probably signs. Yeah, I feel bad for the XFL, man. They seem to have something, a little bit of they had something going for them, and this thing it might have just killed it. It might have just killed it for them. And it sucks to see because there was a lot of people that were really excited about what they were seeing out there. Me included. It was fun to watch them. I would rather the Seahawks not play a season than play without fans. Our defense would get wrecked. Well, we haven't been playing as well at home, Shaquem, in recent years. That's the one thing is with that is that, the home crowd and having that advantage hasn't been as much of a boon. But it would be weird to watch teams play without fans. The one interesting point, though, it would be cool to hear everybody talking on the field. Like you'd hear everything, every word being said would come through on those mics. They might have to have some dump buttons or something because there'd be so much, because it'd just be dead silence, But it'd be odd to watch it without the fans. Sounds good, DJ. Appreciate you hanging in there. Mosey says, what do you think is the most important for us to do to make the playoffs and possibly the Super Bowl? I think that there's really just a 2-step process coming into this offseason, and I think it still remains true, Mo. You need to build your pass rush first because that is not just a problem on this team. It's a glaring weakness. You could call it the team's kryptonite right now. I also would like to see the offensive line have talent added to it, not just also ran parts, bargain basement pieces, but actually upper level talent one way or another added to the offensive line by any means necessary. Those are the two things I'd like to see more so than adding skill positions or running backs or cornerbacks or linebackers. Just stick to that part of it because that's the places to me that this team is really lacking right now. So I hope that they would stick to that spot and kind of go there. They're not really showing as much willingness to do that. They bought bargain basement, also ran parts here with free agency as far as the offensive line goes. Benson Mayowa and Bruce Irvin are not going to be enough to turn the pass rush around on their own, especially if you lose Clowney. So we'll see how it goes with it. But those would be the two things I say that would get you to the Super Bowl. If you concentrate on just those two areas and really hammered it, you could get yourself to the Super Bowl because you got the parts and pieces around him to make it work and get there. If Clowney walks, he single-handedly wrecked the offseason by dicking around. Yeah, it definitely hurt us. I think that there's certainly Seattle held out from making certain other potential moves, I think, because they were kind of trying to wait on him and wanting to, match his offer. I think that they've been out on him for a while now, though. I think once the Benson Mayowa move happened, I think that was an indicator that Clowney probably wasn't coming back at that point. But it's made it this has been a difficult offseason, and that was one of the parts that's made this as much of a difficult offseason as any. Yeah, they were bad, Shaquem, but it's first year's team. They develop, they get better. It's give them time. It was still fun to watch football in the springtime and have some more football going. Atheist says, if we missed a season, how would we pick a draft order next year? So this is my guess for this atheist is that I believe that there would be some kind of lottery system. And so the Bengals this year, it would just be like NBA a little bit. The Bengals this year, because they had the worst year this year, would have more balls than anybody else in the lotto balls. And then the next team would have the next less amount of balls. And the next team would have less amount of balls. And I think it would go on and so forth. I think you would see something like that probably happen to some degree as far as if they pick that way. Which team will be the most improved next year? Who could be the sleeper? Well, I'm all in on the Buccaneers hype train. I thought that was a really good developing defense. I'm talking about building a team from the front seven in, from the front four in. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have done that. JPP, Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea, Shaquille Barrett. They got some guys up front who can get after it. And Devin White was one of my favorite rookies of last year. Obviously, their secondary is going to be a problem and an issue. But that front seven, that front four is going to give teams problems. It's going to stop the run, turn teams into one-dimensional offenses, and we'll see how that goes. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I think Brady's going to be able to work with what they've got. Say nothing of the fact that there's rumors out there that Gronkowski is going to come out of retirement and go to Tampa Bay. So, if that happens and he's got O.J. Howard and Gronkowski, and then he's got Evans and Godwin, that's a lot to work with there. Say nothing for the fact that I think they're going to spend their first-round pick on one of these left tackles in this draft. Mark 11, go Hawks, man. Welcome on into the chat. Mark 11 says, NFC is hard to say for the Super Bowl, but AFC is easy. It's the Chiefs or the Ravens. I got to say, I probably agree with you. I'm not a believer that the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to get there or take that step forward from their standpoint. I don't think that the Steelers are, Roethlisberger comes back. They'll be good. The defense seems to finally be kind of coming back around after years of the offense carrying that team. The defense actually is getting pretty good. So they've got some potential there, but I think Chiefs and Ravens are by far and away the biggest favorite. If you were a Seahawks GM and you're making the picks, what are you going with? What is going to be your strategy? All right. So if I'm picking and it's me picking and it's my mock draft, I trade out of the first round. Because like Schneider, I think there's not a difference between picking the pick who's number 24 to picking the pick that's number 34. I think the talent level is very same. So my mock draft was that I had us taking Ida Gross-Matos, Lucas Nyang, Jalen Rieger, Justin Matabuk, John Unch, trading our fourth rounder for Fournette, and then Murchison, a 3-tech defensive tackle, or Benito Jones, and then whoever in the sixth range where it's sort of a, crapshoot at that point. I'd like to see them go something like that route. Atheist, if there's one move that could draw being able to get the General Manager of the Year award, that would be a move to get the General Manager of the Year award. Everyone in the NFL knew the Arizona Cardinals were trying to get out from under David Johnson's contract. No one was willing to offer any kind of trade value at all for him. He was going to be a street free agent. Now, maybe the Texans didn't want to try to have to pay him or caught in a bidding war with having to pay for him if he got on a street free agent, but you're already paying him $10 million this next year. So what did you think he was going to cost if he reached free agency after being released? Gurley's getting what, $4 or $5 million? You could have halved the salary by waiting till he got released and still given him enough money to bring him along. Hard to see what it is that they were doing with that. An odd deal. Just an odd one. But Bill O'Brien's just running that like a moron at this point. We can all pretty much accept that, right? This is stupidity at its finest, So we're going to go about 5 more minutes here, and then I'm going to cut it off about the 3-hour mark. So if you got any last minute questions, let's go ahead and get them on in. And then I'm going to save up my voice, go drink some honey tea, and get myself prepped up by starting to watch some of this college tape on these prospects here as we can get ready for the draft. Shaquem, I think the Jaguars are selling too. I feel like the trade that's sitting there that happened that would just be 2 birds with 1 stone. It seemed like a no-brainer to make is just package Fournette and package Yannick Ngakoue together, move him to Seattle, and then what do you need from draft compensation? I feel like you can. There's a common ground to find there, being that we could take both of those players off their hands, clear out some salary for them, give them the draft compensation they're actually looking for. Mark 11, does Earl Thomas retire as a Hawk? Yes, he does. They always do that 1-day contract thing. I don't think he retires as a Hawk to play, but there's always that they come back and sign the 1-day contract, which allows them to technically retire as a Seahawk. It's ceremonial, but he is retiring as a Seahawk at that point, nonetheless. If you were to guess, how much would you think Russell? If you were to guess, how much would you think Russell could bench? That took me a second, Tobias. Most of any quarterback in the NFL, or I don't think he would do the most of the NFL because there's probably some freakoids out there. I bet Cam Newton probably puts up a pretty good amount of weight. And then size matters when you're talking about bench press. A guy that's 6 foot tall who weighs 210 pounds versus a guy that's 6'5" who weighs 260. Difference is going to make a difference on the bench usually. He probably puts up, like, I bet you he probably puts up like 315. My wild guess. User Hitstick, who's going to win the NFC West? My winner of the NFC West right now is the San Francisco 49ers. I don't like saying that. Doesn't make me happy. I don't want to see it. But when I look at what the Niners have done this offseason, retaining the talent, not losing anything really, you can make. I know DeBuckner was a good player, but I'm higher on Armstead, so I like them signing Armstead to the multi-year deal, and they were still able to recoup a 13th overall selection in the first round. They're able to go get a CeeDee Lamb in the first round or Derek Brown from Auburn. That team's going to be upgraded over what they probably were last year. So I'm still very high on them. We'll see how it goes. I think Seattle's the second place team at this point. Atheist, what do you think of inside linebacker Troy Dye from Oregon? Atheist, maybe I've got a problem with Oregon players in general, but they just all have a little bit of softness to their game. I have this issue with guard Shane Lemieux as well, who a lot of people are high on. Just a lot of finesse to their game, not a lot of physicality, not a lot of mean nastiness. And I look through this always through the lens of how Seattle is looking to draft and the type of player that they want to target. And the finesse type of player is just not usually in their wheelhouse. A lot of people are high on him. I am not. I've watched a lot of tape on him. I just keep coming back to a lack of physicality, avoiding blocks. He wants to run around all over the place out there, but he doesn't really want to be all that real physical. Maybe he gives you an upper level, great coverage linebacker at the next level. And that's something that's worth something to a degree, but you've got to be able to take on blocks. You've got to be able to be physical to some degree. And I just don't see enough of that in Dye's game. Shaquem, I hope Shaquem will retire as a Seahawk. Maybe so. We'll see with that one. They finally figured out Shaquem last year how to start to utilize him. He had a 9% pass rush win percentage, which was pretty darn good when he came in, and he gave us some juice. He's only going to get about 15 to 20 snaps a game and then play great special teams coverage and all that. So you're going to see he's going to be limited to how much you see him on the field. But in 20 snaps a game, he can be he can cause some problems out there. I heard you live 7 hours. Wow, you're an MVP. These guys get me going to 7 hours sometimes. I'm going to save my voice today. I'm not doing the 7 hour one today, but I will be doing, once the draft hits, you're going to see me doing 8 hours, 8 hours, and 8 hours. I guarantee you pretty much. So it'll be 3 days of 24 hours. I'm not going to be able to talk at all. It's going to be a whisper by the end of things, but I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. I'm sure you guys are going to keep it interesting for me here. Does COVID-19 count as a non-football related injury? I don't think so as far as the owners are concerned in paying out the players. We just saw the NBA come to a settlement with the player association and where they're going to reduce what they make and remove out what they're going to get paid. You'll start to see something very similar in football if this comes down the track where we're missing games and there's actually some lost revenue at play, as we're starting to get precipitously close to having happen. Emma Brown, I'm back real quick. What prospect do you hear about getting a lot of buzz to Seattle? Usually the last week before the draft, there's legit leak. Jalen Rieger, which I know all of you will know will make me very happy. That was the one that I most recently read about. I recently read that Seattle was very, very interested in Jalen Rieger. I've heard about them being slightly associated with Prince Gabudubu, the left tackle out of Auburn, the big 6'7", 6'8" guy. They've been attached slightly to him. Hunter Bryant is a guy I've heard some whispers about with Seattle. John Unch of Michigan Wolverines has been, a lot of people have got him kind of going to Seattle as well. So we could see some of those guys. It certainly makes sense. All those guys would be fits. Certainly would fit into the wheelhouse of it. Any edge rush pass rushers that I like? I'm getting a little bit, they're one of those guys I got to get a deeper into the second level of them, Chase. And what's up, Chase? I've not gotten as deep into some of the next level guys. But the upper level guys, it is definitely a mixed bag. You know, I'm not as high on Davidson. Weaver gives you a good pass rush out the gate. Like Unch, you got some guys that can give you some production right out the gate, which I'm kind of looking for. But high-end guys, I'm not seeing a lot of, a lot of people like Jabari Zuninga, who's got a lot of the potential on tape. But man, I see Zachary Polite with that guy. He just screams that to me for some reason. I don't know why. So I'm still hesitant on these pass rushers, Chase. It's kind of a weak draft for pass rushers. It really is. Last year was the draft to get a good pass rusher. And we thought we were, but we just picked the wrong one. Yeah, I think he can get 6 plates up. Russ is a gym rat. Atheist, I'm not as much on Prince. It's just who they've been linked to. I'm with you. I wasn't as blown away. It's a guy who's got a lot of length and he doesn't use it to his advantage as much as I'd like. Those guys that are big and long like that, in that Andrew Whitworth type mold, you've got to use your length because you are going to be big and lumbering. When you're 6'7", 6'8", it's going to happen. And so it's that ability to lock guys out with your arms is what they've got to fall back on and rely upon. Yeah, I like Jalen Reagor. There's just something about him. He's the Steve Smith of this draft. He reminds me a lot of Steve Smith, where Steve Smith was a small guy, but he could go up and take the ball away out of the air because he had that explosive jump. It's like that Zion Williamson jump, right? Where Zion Williamson is a guy 6'5", 6'6", right? 6'7", maybe even. But he out jumps guys that are 7 feet tall because his explosion and his quickness to his height is so much faster than those taller guys. Same thing with Reagor. He gets up to the air to his highest point of the jump very quickly when he goes after it. And he's a guy who didn't have a great quarterback play, so you didn't get to see the best of him in the quarterback really showing him off. Whereas guys like Henry Ruggs and CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, these guys had pretty good quarterbacks throwing them the football. So, Mark, you might be right with that, Mark. Jalen Reagor might be a little late early. He's probably going to go early in the second. He could be a target though too. I think they're going to trade back in the first round out of 27. And if they trade back out of 27, they'd land at 6, 7, 8 in that second round. You could look at Reagor there and then go get a left tackle later on in the next second round later on. They could go that route as an inverse to that a little bit. But yeah, I would foresee him probably going earlier than late in the second round. John Robinson, what's up? John, you're going to have to get your questions pretty quick here. I'm going to be signing off. We're 3 hours deep and I got to get back to my work here pretty quick. Aleska Grovik. Welcome, Aleska. What do you think about the kicker sensation from Australia, Jack Goff? I don't know a lot about Jack Goff. I'm sorry. I have not heard anything about Jack Goff. Yeah, Steve Smith was all heart. Just a unique receiver. You don't see those kind of receivers out there like that are that type of size that can dominate the game the way he dominated. A unique kind of talent at the wide receiver and just pure explosion. Absolutely just pure explosion from the wide receiver when he was in his prime. Yeah, I think it would give you a killer 3 wide receiver set. You could move them around with Reagor and Tyler. You could switch who you wanted in the slot, however you wanted. I think Reagor can play some slot stuff if you needed him to. I think it would be a great fit. I think Reagor would be good too with that explosiveness on those secondary routes. When Russell breaks off and the initial play isn't there and he's gone through all his reads and he's out there scrambling around, Reagor's going to be able to get quick, easy, fast separation for you on the secondary routes. And I feel like Seattle's going to find some value in that. Atheist, one of my favorite players in this draft, if not he's in my top 3, is Antoine Winfield Jr. You mentioned University of Minnesota, and I agree. Those guys are well coached. I love that guy. I wish we were in the market for a safety. We're not, unfortunately, but I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler. Winfield was a nightmare? On the football field or in the locker room? Alrighty. Well, let's get the last few questions. Oh, against the Badgers, dude, he can do it all. Atheist, I keep telling everybody he's the new Earl Thomas, but bigger and more able to tackle. He's going to be a Pro Bowler from the second that he steps on the football field in the NFL. Completely devalued for some reason. Maybe it's because he's playing up in Minnesota, but I love him as a player. I think he's going to be absolutely fantastic on the next level and right out the gate. He's not going to take any time to develop at all. Hey, Mark 11, thank you for dropping on into the chat, man. I really do appreciate it. Yep, we were bringing guys along. We're adding on little by little here. So this is going to be a fantastic draft. We're going to go strong. I'm going to do an hour before the first round, and then we're just going to try to go strong through there and kind of stay on with you guys till we can stay on. We'll go 3 straight days. Feel free if you guys got anything as far as questions or anything, hit me up on the chat here on the live stream or whatnot. We'll give Les Caden. What do you think the Seahawks are going to do as centers? I still think Caden, at the end of the day, Britt will probably be cut one way or another. I think they're waiting on a medical release to go on with him. So I think you're probably going to see BJ Finney, Ethan Posick battling it out for the starter's role there. Hey, thank you, John Staff. I really do appreciate you hopping on in the chat, man. Atheist, yeah, you can't teach guys to be tackle or physical. Atheist, that's why I'm not a big fan of Trayvon Diggs in this draft. He's a guy who shows no willingness whatsoever to tackle at all. And though he's very good in coverage and great ball skills and all that, it's a guy who's just unwilling to tackle completely, very soft. Ignite Scully, man, you caught me just as I'm signing off, dude. I'm sorry. Yeah, Winfield can tackle. He does. He's just a complete player. Never forget with Antoine Winfield too. His father was the best tackling cornerback potentially in NFL history at 5'8". I mean, that tells you a lot about that guy's heart and lineage that he's coming from. And I'm a big believer in lineage. We got DK Metcalf on our team. Tell me he doesn't have some lineage to his game. You know, I'm a believer in that. Yeah, you can DM me on social media, Shaquem. I absolutely will respond. I'm on Seahawks Nestor on Twitter. You feel free to hit me up on there or anywhere you see me on social media, hit me up. I will always try to respond if you got a question or a comment or just anything at all. Always there. Ignite Scully, you got any questions or anything, man? I know you just hopped in the chat. I don't want to end this before if you had any thoughts or whatnot. Mark 11, I'm all over that TJ Wilborn. We're going to be on that. We are going to be leading the TJ Wilborn bandwagon when that day comes. So you can believe that. You can believe that. I already told TJ. I'll do the draft breakdown on him. I'll be making him look like next Walter Jones on my draft film. Look at this hand placement. Look at this anchor. Yeah, I've got social media. I'm a Seahawks Nestor, Shaquem, and I will post this in the description section, the link to my Twitter. So you can find me at Seahawks Nestor, Seahawks, Nester on Twitter. Feel free to follow me over on there. It's kind of my only social media. I've got a Facebook page for the Hawks Nestors too that I'm just starting to develop, so it's a little bit undermanned, kind of a bit. So, I'm an atheist. I'm live streaming all of the draft. So I'll be live streaming all 3 days, every day, 7 to 8 hours a pop each time, 24 hours over 3 days. I'm going to kill my voice, but it's going to be fun doing it. Ethan, Tyler Johnson looked all right on tape. He's on my list to give another look, see, because I didn't get into good enough feel. You know, sometimes you watch guys tape and you go, Davidson was like this with Auburn, where I watched one game and I go, I don't know what I'm seeing quite yet. And another again, I'm not quite sure what I'm seeing quite yet. When it comes to a receiver, maybe that's a little bit of a detraction because maybe he should be showing me a wow factor or something popping off tape at that point. But he's got a lot of people that are on his, are in his corner and love him. It's like Colin Johnson from Texas, where it's a guy that he's just kind of flying under the radar a little bit. And I feel like maybe I'm missing something on him to a degree. But just so far what I've seen, I'm just not quite. And yeah, maybe that's where I've got to just check on him. The sideline catches, he's good. All right. He's on my list. I've got a list of guys I'm taking a look at. And so I don't have final judgment on Tyler Johnson yet. It was my initial impressions was just not a lot of wow necessarily. But we'll give him a look-see. Give him a little look-see. All right, folks. Well, we're 3 hours through. I think we've got our questions hit up. I will look forward to catching you guys all on draft day. Thank you to everyone here for joining the chat, the live stream here, watching the Great Seahawks Moment video. If there's anything you guys can do to help, again, to get this channel grow, please just continue to tell your friends and family about the channel. It does well to just keep the subscriber base going. That's the number one thing I'm looking to push through right now and just keep kind of rising on up to the top if I can. So thank you to all. Atheist, it's good to see you back in the chat, man. You dirty Packer fans. Emmett, thank you so much as well. You guys have a good rest of your week here. It's gonna be a long week till draft day. I'm gonna be just tapping the toes, waiting. Thank you, user Hitstick. You guys stay safe, stay healthy, vitamin C, vitamin D, get out in the sunshine, get on the walk, all that good stuff. And, hey, well, we do appreciate that. Wisconsin has given us some love and we've got to acknowledge and appreciate that, to some degree. So I gotta acknowledge it, man. Well, thank you to everyone. As always, I salute all of you Seahawk fans, my fellow 12s out there, even the Pack fans like atheists. And as always, to everyone out there, don't you ever forget, none of you ever do forget, go Hawks.